live, guys. Welcome to Bitcoin Magazine's 24th live show. We're really excited to have you all with us. I'm really excited to announce we have Greg Foss on live today to talk exciting news, price action, all things Bitcoin, his Bitcoin story. It's all going to be right here, guys. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you this is the last couple days you can get a 21% discount on your Bitcoin 2022 conference tickets. So to get that 21% discount on tickets, which is the biggest discount out there, folks, you're going to want to go to Bitcoin 2022, search it in Google, check the link in the description for this video, and go to the website and type in YTMAG as the promo code at checkout. Again, check the description of the video. That promo code is YTMAG for 21% off your tickets. That will be the biggest event, biggest financial event of the year, biggest networking event if you're looking to leave your fiat job and do something in the Bitcoin industry, I guess you could call it. A bunch of amazing speakers there. We're going to have Greg Foss. We're going to have Michael Saylor, Saifedean. We're going to have Nayib Bukele, a lot of people who have yet to be announced. There's also a music festival. There's an industry day. I just can't stress enough how big of an opportunity this is going to be, especially if you're looking to find work within Bitcoin. So outside of that, I want to make sure you all have a chance to earn some Bitcoin while you watch this interview today. So download the Carrot app. There should be a QR code appearing on screen. Download the Earn Carrot app. We'll pop some codes on screen throughout the stream, which you type into the Earn Carrot app for actual Bitcoin that you can withdraw to your wallet. We should be giving away a lot of Bitcoin today, so I'm excited about that. Last thing to note, the more conference tickets you guys buy during the stream, the more Bitcoin we actually give away to all you in the chat. So I will be keeping tabs. Go get your tickets now if you want us to drop more Bitcoin on the stream. So happy to have you all with us. And with that, I would like to introduce the great Greg Foss.
Great. Holy smokes. Well, thank you for having me. Certainly not great, but happy to be here.
How you doing today? How's this price action treating you?
Okay. Don't take my smile in the wrong way, but I love markets like this. I've spent 30 years. Volatility is my friend. Volatility makes careers. And I'm not saying I'm having a career maker day by any means, but this is playing right into our script, right? The Fed is cornered. Markets are puking. We knew that would happen. The taper tantrum is real for a second time. You just have to set up your portfolio accordingly and manage risk accordingly.
I love it. So, Greg, we have a lot of new listeners on this side of things for this show. Do you mind? I know you've done this before, but going into your backstory a little bit and how you came to Bitcoin and to be such a big voice in Bitcoin.
Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm 58 years old. So 30 years ago, actually, let's do the math. 1988, I graduated from Cornell University. I'm a Canadian, but I went down for a 2-year MBA at Cornell, which was an amazing experience. But in 1988, I came back to Canada. I was an engineer in undergrad, came back to Canada, and I wanted to work in financial engineering. Okay. I love mathematics. I'm okay at it as far as engineers go. But I decided the finance industry was my calling. And I came back to Canada and worked for Canada's largest financial institution at the time, which it still is Canada's largest financial institution, the Royal Bank of Canada. And make a long story short, one of my first projects working directly for the CFO of the Royal Bank of Canada was to work on our defaulted Latin American debt portfolio, okay? And the Royal Bank of Canada had $4 billion of exposure to LDC debt, lesser developed country debt, of which Latin America was a big component. All of these countries had defaulted because they had taken out floating rate loans priced in US dollars. And in the early 80s, Paul Volcker raised rates so excessively to fight inflation that these floating rate loans meant the rates went up in lockstep. These floating rate loans were extremely hard to service, and not to mention the fact that the US dollar was strengthening. So they had to pay US dollar interest expense, which was rising in a currency that wasn't their own. Essentially, all of these countries bankrupt, 1988. And I looked at our exposure because Treasury Secretary Nicholas Brady of the US came out with what was called the Brady Plan. The Brady Plan was an attempt, and it was a successful attempt, to solve the Mexican portion of that Latin American debt exposure. Anyway, I won't go into the math, but I quickly determined that Royal Bank of Canada, Canada's largest financial institution, was insolvent in 1988. And I'm like, what the heck is this? A Canadian financial institution is actually on its way to bankruptcy. So I went to the CFO. I said, Emil, we have a problem. He says, I know we do. Don't tell anybody. But certainly the reality was that Treasury Secretary Nicholas Brady knew, because every single money center bank in New York, as well as global money center banks, were all in the exact same boat. The banking system was insolvent, which basically means the book value of their equity was vaporized if you mark down the value of the loans to a market trading price. In the case of Latin American debt, you had to write off 75% of the value of the loan. You write that off against your risk absorbing capital, which is called equity. When you write that off, equity goes negative. If equity is negative book value, you know you're called insolvent, and the next step is bankruptcy. And I'm like, this is how the fiat system works. I didn't learn this at Cornell. I certainly don't understand why people deposit their money in banks. And then you think about it for a sec. Why do people deposit their money in banks? And they all say it's because they're too big to fail and the government will bail them out, right? Well, the government bailing them out, how? The government can print money. So 1988, I'm like, all right, I have a ton of school loans. Am I going to run to the Wall Street Journal? Because none of the financial analysts on Wall Street had a clue either, okay? They had buy recommendations on the stock because, oh, it's got to be cheap. It's come down from $50 a share to $4 a share in the case of Citibank. It's got to be cheap. You got to buy it. No, actually, you don't have to buy it, because at the end of the day, this thing can go to zero and even the debt can become impaired. But that's another story. Point is, 1988, exposure to the fiat Ponzi, looking for a solution. Am I going to run to the Wall Street Journal and torpedo my career? I have a bunch of school loans and I don't have the solution. Well, fast forward to 2016, after living through long-term capital management in 1998, the great financial crisis in 2008, and then the COVID, we didn't hit the COVID crisis. I was introduced into Bitcoin in 2016. And I'm like, oh my God. I have been looking for this solution for over 25 years. Now, I thought it was a Ponzi, right? Because I read mainstream media and I actually said, yeah, it's got to be a Ponzi, Then I actually did some homework and I saw the blockchain in action at tradeblock.com. And as an engineer, being visual, I see these beautiful, living, breathing machine transferring value from address to address around the globe. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And nobody controls this? There's no central bank shenanigans? And I was in love, absolutely in love, because for 25 years, I've been looking for this solution. So in 2016, the world had a chance to backpedal with all the financial kicking the can down the road they'd done through the 3 successive crises that I'd lived through. It would have been a very austere and painful process. And any politician that decided they were going to take that upon themselves to do that would certainly be voted out of office the next term. So they decide not to do it. They try a little bit, and recall when the last taper tantrum was, equity markets did exactly the same thing. They puked. The Fed took their foot off the brake. They tried to assuage everyone who's concerned about how capitalism works, and the Ponzi continued. Then 2019-20, 2020, I guess, whenever the COVID crisis hit hard, that's when the mathematics made it 100% certain we cannot escape this debt spiral. This debt spiral, as a lot of other smart, I'm not saying I'm smart, but other smart macro guys like Luke Groman points out, the USA can't meet its interest expense on its funded debt without extreme US dollar liquidity, which if they start taking that out of the system, which is called tightening, the whole thing collapses. The fiat Ponzi is 100% certain to continue. It's just that nobody at the Fed has done the math, and they're trying to jawbone the market into believing they can hike rates 8 or 6 times. That's what they're leaking out through Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. Guys, it's mathematically impossible to do it. They might hike rates, but they're just going to have to print money even faster. So it's just like sucking and blowing at the same time. Okay, these guys are a bunch of buffoons. You don't ask a lawyer to run the most important central bank in the world. It's very simple.
Greg, I just wanted to chime in. I'm Q. It's a pleasure to not only get to meet you. I've listened to you talk so many times. I'm so excited to have this conversation with someone who sees it very similarly to the way I see it.
Okay.
Quite frankly, no, we can never do this whole tapering.
QE forever. QE forever. Nice to meet you. Learn math. It's grade 11 math. And if you believe differently, take the glue bag off, okay? Take that stupid glue bag off your heads, you guys. It is simple mathematics.
I think another thing too that, like, to your point, like we have these lawyers making decisions about global economics at this point. In today's day and age, after what we saw in 2008, it is global economics whenever it comes to what happens.
Yeah. The U.S. is the most so let's go back to my experience in 1988. The USA has always been the most important economy in the world, and the federal bank, the Federal Reserve, is the most important central bank in the world. In 1988, they fought inflation by raising interest rates domestically and succeeded in bankrupting 44 countries. 44. Now, fast forward to now where our debt balloon is bigger and more onerous, and the US dollar is strengthening, the same component that causes emerging markets to get destroyed. You can strengthen the US dollar by tapering, essentially withdrawing reserves from the system so that the value of the US dollar is perceived to go higher. Emerging market currencies shit the bed, and it toilets. All of a sudden they are hedging. Their equity markets are getting destroyed. So there's people out there hedging by shorting the S&P as a hedge against emerging markets, and it doesn't work. Where does it come home to roost? When pensioners in the USA said, I thought my pension fund was funded, and now the equity markets are down 15% to start the year. That's when the politicians wake up and say, midterm elections, eh? Wow, I'm not so sure I want the market to be down 20% and people worried about their pension plans. This tapering is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to institute in the short term, and it is impossible to institute in the long term.
We've entered the final phase of this money printing where we just can't stop. I mean, the Fed alone printed.
Yeah, you're totally right. But there is a solution. It's a parallel solution. I do not want the US to fail. I need to be very clear. Yes, I live in Canada, but the USA is the most important component of the global financial system. Canada is a rounding error. Like, we just don't matter. Okay, Canada, go on your way. You're not even as big as the state of California. So quit causing trouble. You might have a buffoon as a prime minister, but even he doesn't matter. Okay. At the end of the day, what you got to understand is the USA is the world's insurance policy. Everybody needs the USA to succeed. And when the USA starts making all these other countries' economies difficult, they look for hedges. They look for other outs. And, I wrote an article for Bitcoin Magazine with Seb Bunny, a great kid from Whistler, British Columbia, who's actually a Kiwi living in Whistler. We wrote why Bitcoin is the perfect option. And, I'm proud of that article, having written it with Seb, because it's true. Bitcoin is a put on the Federal Reserve failing to institute global calm. So it's a put on what's called the Fed put. The Fed put is generally Alan Greenspan started this in the 1987 with the financial markets crash in 1987. He cut rates to help the stock market, even though the USA was not in recession. It's the first time in history that a central banker had cut rates to assuage financial markets, not economic recession or negative growth. So since 1987, this has been a policy where the Fed monitors global stock markets, particularly domestic stock markets, and the Fed put is a reality. Has it changed, allowed equity markets to go up to unsustainable levels? Yeah, but that's how it's been. So when they try and stop this, you get days like today. And days like today, if you had done your homework, you would know that they happen because people all of a sudden withdraw liquidity from the system. And in a liquidity unwind, pretty well every asset gets torpedoed. Bonds are a horrible investment even before this happened, but there's no out. The only out is to continue to print money. And when you continue to print money, your fiat gets debased. That's 100% certain. And when your fiat gets debased, you need hard assets that will preserve your time and energy for use in the future. And don't store your time and energy in a debasing fiat. You need to store your time and energy in other hard assets. You know my feeling on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's getting flushed right now with the rest of the crypto space, and rightly so, according to any other crypto trader, because every other crypto besides Bitcoin is actually a security. So when security markets fall, every other crypto, which is a security, falls in lockstep. And what do most other crypto holders do to hedge their crypto exposure? Well, they short Bitcoin, don't they? So it's all part of the whole process. Bitcoin is going to fall further. There is no question, in the context of other security markets falling as well. But over time, people will actually understand that Bitcoin is your insurance policy. It is actually the opposite of any other crypto out there and any other security out there. Mm-hmm. It's a long process, a long education process, you guys. And yeah, look, I own Bitcoin, so it's down, but I'm a professional risk manager. I absolutely have hedges against my Bitcoin exposure. And those hedges are paying dividends today. And, you know, I'll live to fight another day. I know it's difficult for people that are out there that have bought Bitcoin at higher prices and don't have the hedges in place. But if they had listened to guys like me and Jeff Booth, I hope they did. They didn't go all in. You never go all in on one asset. Okay, I am a Bitcoin maxi. I need you to understand that, but I am not 100% in on Bitcoin. That's not how you manage risk. And at the end of the day, if Bitcoin goes to the price I think it will, I don't have to be 100% in order to do really well, right? The X% of my portfolio that is in Bitcoin, if it goes up 100 and 200 times from here, do the math. You're going to do just fine on a portfolio or a risk adjusted basis. Okay. And so days like today, I have never said be 100% in Bitcoin, but days like today make it easier for me to make the argument. The only wrong allocation to Bitcoin is 0. But in my opinion, being 100% allocated to Bitcoin as well can lead to some, you know, not so comfortable days. And today's one of those days. Am I happy about it? Guys, no, I'm not happy when people lose money. I think Bitcoin is the solution, but it doesn't help our narrative when, you know, it falls as much as Netflix has fallen. It falls as much as other, you know, far less valuable assets and instruments to solve the fiat Ponzi. But that happens when you have a bunch of traders and players who have not done the math, who are using it as a hedging instrument against other silly exposures like, you know, altcoins and, you know, penny stocks and all this stuff that, or meme stocks, I should say. It's painful. It's painful when this happens. I've lived through a number of them. Hopefully you go home and live to fight another day because you've put in your hedges so that you can harvest the dampening of the portfolio. So long drawn out. Please understand, people, I am not rejoicing in anybody's pain here. This is not about me saying, I told you so, I told you so. No, 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 no. This is about understanding risk management and putting things in place that will protect you to live to fight another day. In 20 years, am I confident that Bitcoin will be the solution? Yes. But getting from here to 20 years from now, you can experience some drawdowns and they hurt.
So, Greg, the obvious question is, I'm someone, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a Bitcoin maximalist, but I hold Bitcoin and I, for the most part, only hold Bitcoin. So
Okay.
from this perspective, what is the path or strategy? What are hedges or hedging strategies that you implement or suggest for new Bitcoiners who are maybe can't stomach this risk? I
Yeah.
know there's no
Well,
one
first of all, if you
solution for
can't
everyone.
stomach it, you own too much. Okay. And I hate to say it any other way. If you cannot stomach it,
Yeah.
that's probably an indication that you went too far over your skis. So what am I? I'm essentially a volatility trader. Okay. So on days like today, if you look at what the VIX has done in the last 3 days, the VIX is up 50%. So imagine if I own some VIX. Imagine if you know, I can cash in that insurance. Now, over time, generally the VIX will have time decay, but on days like today, when that position is up 50%, you're like, hey, that's not a bad little result. And so my whole life has been spent trading volatility, and I don't expect to be able to. Well, I certainly not even going to try to explain to people what that means. But there's a lot of old time risk managers out there that understand what I'm saying, because if you survive for 30 years in the markets today. Now, I'll take it one step farther, Alex. Again, I'm not rejoicing. I'm not rejoicing because if things do unravel and all of a sudden the fiat system does go to hell in a handbasket, we do not have the parallel system in place yet that will solve this. You know, Bitcoin hasn't been embraced as this parallel system. You see all the guys, oh, store of value. That's hilarious. These equity idiots that are out there saying, oh, so they called Bitcoin a store of value. Fuck you guys, okay? You grew up like 10 years ago. You have no idea what credit is. You're a bunch of buffoons managing money in equity markets. You got to learn what really makes the markets work, and that's credit. And Bitcoin is insurance on the credit system. And equities are nothing but, you know, a derivative or the tail of the dog called credit. There could be some very painful days to come, depending on what happens at the Fed meeting starting tomorrow. Okay. You think 10% is painful? Wait until they announce that they are not wavering from their prediction of 6 interest rate hikes. 10% is going to feel like a holiday. Okay. This is dangerous. This is what happens when the Fed backs themselves into a corner and the market is calling their bluff. We'll see what happens.
I do actually, I know you said you don't want to dive into this, but I actually do want to at least touch on briefly just volatility in general.
Okay.
It gets a little bit of a bad rap. You think it's a necessarily bad thing, or it could be an overly good thing, but you have to play both sides of it. If something is more volatile, for example, Bitcoin.
I don't mean it, that way. Listen, volatility is a fact of life, and assets are defined as being long vol assets or short vol assets. Most assets out there are what's called short vol, meaning when volatility is declining, equity prices are rising, credit spreads are narrowing, everything with a risk component is going up in value. Why? Because volatility, which is a measure of risk, is declining. So when you're short something that's declining, you're making money, aren't you? When you're short something that's going down. But how does VIX trade? Down, 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 boom, spike. It takes the elevator up, right? The stairway down and the elevator up. Well, these days, the elevator is going up. So I look for long volatility assets in my career. It used to be that the treasury bond was a long volatility asset, which meant when the VIX was declining, the treasury bond was kicking along, paying its coupon. But when VIX spiked, everybody ran out of equities and into the bond, and the price of bonds went up. Well, right now, the price of bonds are not going up because they have lost their, and when I say bonds, I mean US treasury bonds, not high yield bonds. They have lost their long vol characteristics because interest rates are so low. There's no longer a cushion. What are other long volatility assets out there? Well, when you own options, you own an option gets more valuable when volatility kicks up. It's my opinion that Bitcoin is the perfect long volatility asset. Why is that? Because essentially Bitcoin, in my mind, as a credit trader, is being short sovereign risk. Means you own insurance on sovereign credits not being able to make payments on their outstanding contractual obligations. If that's in fact the case, which the market has not embraced yet, but I'm trying to promote that only because I absolutely firmly believe it, Bitcoin is the perfect long volatility asset. And over time, if we actually live through a couple of other financial crises, and that's going to be an argument of itself, when vol spikes, over time, Bitcoin, in my opinion, should spike as well because it's actually protection. It's your insurance. And when things get risky, you actually run and buy insurance. Let's see what happens. It isn't there yet. Am I disappointed? I think the price of Bitcoin has been a rounding error, and I'm not prepared to tell you whether I think it's worth 20,000, 50,000, 150,000. All of those prices are rounding errors in the context of what I think its true value is.
I completely agree with that. And I do kind of want to ask you if you will entertain us a little bit of, like, you mentioned you do believe the price of Bitcoin will continue to go down. What are some of these?
Well, let's be careful. It will continue to go down in correlation with other risk assets, right, which include crypto, which are short vol assets. Every other asset in digital asset world is a short volatility asset. But what do some of these crypto asset managers do? Oh, they buy puts, or they short Bitcoin futures, or they use Bitcoin as a hedge against their other digital assets. Is it smart? I think they may be inverted, meaning they don't understand what they're shorting. But in the short run, yeah, they've been right. There's a correlation there, and there's more of them than there are of me. But this is an education process. It's it may go down. The reason it goes down, in my opinion, is because the Fed jawbones the market into believing that 6 interest rate hikes are inevitable. I don't think they're even possible, but yes, that's how it goes down. So
at what point do we start to see that decoupling, though? Is it?
Boy, I couldn't tell you. Can you give me the date? Because you give me the date, and I promise I'll make you a lot of money. Okay, so just give me the date, and I'll tell you how to trade it.
Meet me in Vegas, and we'll, while we have all that.
Yeah, but here's the cooler thing, right? This actually is math, and this is so the probability is there that it happens, but the timing is a bigger uncertainty, right? How long does it take to educate the world about the beauty of this long volatility insurance contract? And it's going to take an awful lot of time, because you got guys like Gary Black out there, an equity manager who doesn't fucking know shit, that says stuff like, oh, Bitcoin is, Bitcoin's a risk asset, and don't tell me any. He's a fucking equity clown. Equity clowns are the problems with most markets, okay? They don't understand math. They play themes, and they don't understand that they're actually a derivative or the tail of the dog called the credit markets. None of them understand credit markets, so they spew silly stuff that most people read and believe because, oh, he must be smart, he manages money.
Right. I mean, all of the money, USD, is just created simply through credit. Like, there's nothing,
absolutely
nothing else is backing it. So in effect, it genuinely is a glorified Ponzi scheme that we have, as far as.
Oh, no, look, this is the purest example of a Ponzi. I mean, Lawrence Leopard and whoever coined it, Max Kaiser or Stacy or whoever coined it, I'm using it. You cannot taper a Ponzi. Okay, man, that is the most brilliant expression that I've learned on Bitcoin Twitter in the year and a half I've been involved in this pretty funny space, right? Like lots of really smart people, lots of emotional people, lots of people who tweet stuff and then wish they didn't, myself included. Sometimes you just get too far over your skis, right? But we do it because we care. And do I want, I gotta stress this so hard, guys. I am not a Bitcoin maximalist that wants the USA to fail. There are people out there that I believe do want that. And my best advice is you better be careful what you wish for. Okay. Why don't we work towards solving this where you have a parallel network? One's called fiat. That's your savings, your checking account. And one called Bitcoin, which is your savings account. And the two can actually work in concert and make the USA even stronger than it already is. Boy, it's a tough road to hoe, right? In a market like this. But we're only 13 years old. We've seen these 50% drawdowns before. How much lower is it going to go? If you tell me how much further the equity markets will go, I'll tell you how much further I think the Bitcoin market will go. But it's a painful process right now. And by the way, look, I own some equities. I own some real estate. None of these things are doing particularly well today. The only thing that is doing well is volatility. So I'm not going to go out there and tell people how to trade volatility either, though. It took me 30 years to learn how to not lose as much money as you can possibly lose. So you gotta do it with a little bit of experience under your belt.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've taken the role in this show and with a lot of our viewers as the one person who continues to preach what you say of, I don't go all in. I don't care what asset it is, whatever it is. I've learned that lesson before. I've made that mistake, and that's a very expensive lesson to learn. I've learned it one too many times at this point, and it's not something that I'm willing to recreate.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, Q. What's your experience? How did you learn to manage risk over time? And I'm going to guess your age is not 58. Okay, I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm almost certain you're not as old as I am, right? So.
I think, unfortunately, I will just tell you flat out, you got to subtract 30 from that, and then you got my.
Which is good. I'll tell you, when I was your age, I didn't know shit. And that's true, because when you come out of university, generally you don't know shit. Okay. Everyone thinks you know something, but you really don't. You don't know shit. So you got to learn through sitting in the risk chair. You got to learn not from endowed professors that have never sat in a risk chair before, who pretend they know stuff, but they've actually never managed risk. So their paper looks really good in writing, but it holds no water when markets melt down. So anyway, so you're 30 years younger than me. You're talking a really good language because most people your age don't understand this.
No, I was very fortunate that I made the decision halfway through college to change my second major from marketing to finance.
Okay.
I was a starry-eyed kid who watched Jerry Maguire, and I genuinely was like, oh, I'm going to just be Jerry Maguire. Went down that path. I went all in on that lifestyle, all in on that career, had my fun with it. And like in the back of my mind, I was still learning more about finance. I still had my own equity account. I was trading, and it was that beginner luck mentality of every single trade that I was making was working.
So everyone's a genius in a bull market, right?
Exactly. I couldn't pick a loser. I couldn't pick a loser, even though it was literally the Fed that was making me look like a
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then the second I took my eyes away from that and was like, I'm just going to let this portfolio sit and fester, little did I realize that you could have two winners, but if the rest of the portfolio is toxic and full of like depleting and companies that are just on their way out, that portfolio, you're lucky if you break even. And thankfully I didn't get it to zero, but it got very close to zero. Was able to build it back with my.
Were you doing it for yourself, or were you doing it for other people?
Strictly for myself.
Okay, try doing it for other people. All right. It's easiest to lose your own money. And then it's second easiest to lose a bank's money. You still feel shitty about it, but it's a bank's money. Then do it when you're managing money for friends and family. And you feel like an absolute fool you go home and you're like, I lost a ton of money today. And they're supposed to tell you, well, you did really well compared to the index, meaning, you know, you're down 10%, but the index is down 25%. You're like, oh, you can't buy money, you know, you can't buy more groceries with that type of performance, but still you're supposed to feel good. So, you know, I did it for 30 years. Let me tell you, managing money for other people is an incredibly stressful occupation. And most good risk managers care. And here's my daily shot at Peter Schiff, except for him. He's admitted he doesn't care. What a fucking loser. Okay. Shifty Pete is a conflicted fuck who says that he didn't care when I called him out on a debate on Peter McCormick's podcast as being a horrible risk manager. He says, yeah, well, so what? I don't care. Well, anybody with money with Peter Schiff, if you don't listen to a risk asset manager who says he doesn't care about your money, you deserve to lose the money you're going to lose with guys like Peter Schiff.
He has this arrogance about him too. Just, it's almost like this lack of desire.
Let's not, you know what? I like his son, and he gave birth to a, well, he didn't give birth to, but he participated in the creation of a great son. And let's give him kudos for that. But as far as a risk manager, and then always, you know what is he? He's the ambulance chaser, right? Yeah, I told you Bitcoin would go down. I told you Bitcoin would go down. If he had bought 1% of his portfolio in Bitcoin when he first heard about it at $10 a Bitcoin, 1% of his gold portfolio, he'd be up over 600 times for his whole portfolio. And he's a good risk manager? No, sir. He's an absolute conflicted buffoon. And I've used those words a lot today. I'm a buffoon. I'll admit it. Shifty Pete, at least admit you're a buffoon, because you're costing a lot of people money with your advice.
I believe
there's the
Peter
clip
Schiff
right
is
there.
out there in the ethos. This is a direct challenge from Greg Foss to come and debate the merits.
No, I can't do it anymore. Here's the funny thing. Like, it's like debating a toaster, right? It's like debating a toaster. You put the toast down, you know that it's going to pop up at some point, but he never changes his tune. The guy has given so much horrible advice to risk managers anywhere that anyone who listens to him right now, I guess I've just turned it off and said, look, you're going to listen to this clown. You deserve what you get. Okay. He knows he's wrong, you guys. That's the worst part of this. And he's not man enough to admit his mistakes. That is really shameful, costing people money. You know, yeah, he's the world's greatest asset manager over the last 3 weeks. Okay. How's your gold fund done, sir? I'm down like 10% over the last 2 years in gold. Like, that's not a good asset manager. But as he said, he doesn't care. I guess what he cares about is Twitter followers. But let's change the subject. I apologize. I made a New Year's commitment that I was going to be nicer. So I'm not following through on that nicety right now.
That's all right. We can, you know, at the very least, we can say Peter Schiff accepts Bitcoin. So there's the truth of it all right there for you.
I don't have my tinfoil hat. This is going to be a thing, but I'm fully convinced.
I like his son. Did you know this story? I actually gave his son Bitcoin for his son's birthday. Over 2 years ago. He admitted that he owned a Bitcoin wallet. So I said, give me your address. I wasn't sure if I was talking on Twitter with a robot or not. Anyway, to that robot address, I sent a bunch of Bitcoin. It wasn't a bunch. It was like $100 US worth. Happy birthday, Spencer. He admitted he got it. Then his father comes on and says, you bunch of Bitcoin idiots are sending Bitcoin to my son. Man, I thought you were stupid. Now I'm sure of it. So that $100 that I sent to Spencer was when Bitcoin probably was at $8,000. So it's still up 4 times. I really hope he didn't sell it. Okay? From there, it had gone up as high as 70 or gone up as high as over 10, almost 10 times. Point is this, again, remember, Bitcoin is part of a diversified portfolio of hard assets, including gold. I own gold. I own gold for days like today because gold is actually flatlining, and Bitcoin and other harder assets than gold or equally hard assets are down 10% plus. What does a smart risk manager do on days like today? Peels off a little bit of his gold, buys a little more of the other hard assets that have not held in, like gold is held in.
I like it. I could see the logic in that. I was wondering to pivot a little bit if you wanted to touch on the structure of the El Salvador Bitcoin bond.
Yeah, great question. I cannot. I have not involved myself in the process enough to talk. I did initially when I saw the initial terms. I understand that it would be unbelievable if they actually get the funding done in February. They talked about an order book. If that order book is real, like I'm used to living in a world where you have an underwriter that goes around and canvases some really big accounts that set the anchor orders for order books, and then they show the rest of the interest to the rest of the world. I will just tell you this: on the surface, from what I know, a Bitcoin bond structured like the El Salvador bond makes a lot of sense to me. I am not certain of their execution. I hope it succeeds. I mean, it's $1 billion. There was a time when $1 billion was a lot of money. $1 billion is nothing anymore. It's really funny to say that, isn't it? Royal Bank of Canada had $4 billion of defaulted Latin American debt, and that was enough to make it insolvent in 1988. And now we talk about $1 billion as if you can just find it in your seat cushion at your office, like, oh, okay, well, here's $1 billion. I mean, the Fed's done trillions, so $1 billion is like 1/1000. So who really cares? It will change the lives of the Bitcoin population if they can get some funding that is not IMF stamp of approval and all the living under the foot of the IMF and all of these other corrupt global financial organizations. I really hope it happens. As a Bitcoiner, I am considering moving to El Salvador. Okay. I will just tell you, over the long term, attracting people with, I'm not saying I'm rich, but I'm probably better off than the average citizen of El Salvador. If you attract people like that to your country because you have policies that are open-minded, that's going to change the GDP and the growth prospects of an entire nation of 6 million people. And I want them to succeed. I want them to succeed because they deserve it. I want them to succeed because they have a president who thinks outside the box. And I really want them to succeed because assholes like Steve Hanke don't want them to succeed. And that is absolutely disgraceful, in my opinion. So I've said a lot of hate words. I will say some love to the people of El Salvador. I honestly want a better future for you. I want a better future for you, and you've had the guts to embrace a solution that I believe in that will open the future for you and for your children. And any other nation that's not considering doing the same thing is probably going to wish they did in 5 or 10 years, when countries like El Salvador are leading the pack and the rest of us are pulling up the rear. Canada, a G7 nation, owns 0 gold. I would love Canada to embrace Bitcoin as a store of value on its balance sheet for the future of my children and other Canadian children.
Yeah, the question becomes, are you interested in waiting to see what other countries are going to adopt Bitcoin friendly policy? Because I don't know about you, but I'm sure it's going to happen this year. I don't see any reason why not.
Right? Look, I did give a presentation to 45 members of parliament in Canada on Bitcoin. I know that there's people studying it. Now, studying it and embracing it as legal tender like El Salvador did there's a very big delta between the two, right? But at least people are studying it. Would I love Canada to be there? I don't think you were implying that Canada is going to be there in the next little while, but would there be other lesser privileged countries than Canada that should consider it? Well, I've seen stuff about Ethiopia and this beautiful dam they have and all this power that's heretofore gone to waste that could be used for Bitcoin mining. And I'm like, go for it, guys. Absolutely 100% go for it, because I'm a privileged old boomer, and I'm embarrassed about privileged old boomers like myself who are so soft that they cannot endure any hardship, that we are pulling forward gains that should be accruing to our children because we're so soft. We can't even deal with asset price corrections or, the thought of the government not being there to give you handouts, okay? Like, we got to start ponying up. We got to start helping those who are less privileged. Otherwise, there's going to be class warfare. You don't want a lot of this stuff that is very clearly on the table because of failed government policies and fiat money that causes a widening of the wealth gap.
Yeah, I mean, the wealth gap in America right now presently is wider than it was right before the French Revolution. So
right before when?
The French in France, when right before the
Okay. Interesting. I'm not sure how you measure that, but it seems logical to me. I mean,
based on low average of the lowest income, average income of the lowest denominated class and the average income of the highest denominated class.
Interesting.
Inflation adjusted, you actually have a wider disparity today presently than you did back then.
Yeah, intuitively it makes sense. I mean, you can just feel it, right? Everyone feels good when the government puts a couple of $1,000s in your bank account. But the reality is the people that it hurts the most are the people that think the most of it, meaning like, oh my God, I've never had a couple of $1,000s in my bank account before in my life. Now I have it thanks to the government. They don't realize they're the people that are being hurt most by that policy.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, what do you say to the people who are finding that for the first time in their life they can save due to Bitcoin? I feel like there are a lot of young retail investors who, especially over all the mobile apps that have come out that have made it possible, Cash App and Strike being, some of the best among them. I mean, what do you say to these people who are now finding themselves saving money for the first time in their life?
Congratulations. Like, one of the stories I've used, and I don't know whether it's been on a Bitcoin Magazine podcast, but when I was, a little younger than you guys, but still in my early 20s, one of my summer jobs was asphalt shingles, right? I was installing asphalt shingles on roofs. And if you guys have ever want to go through a horrendously hard work 8-hour day, go on the top of a roof when it's 80 degrees out and it's blazing sunshine. And I earned in the 1980s, I earned maybe $5 an hour because I was paid with cash, $5 an hour. And I worked an 8-hour day. So I made $40 in one day. And imagine if I had never converted that fiat money to, let's say, an equity or something. And there's a chance I didn't, given that my earnings power increased and increased over time. That original $40 sitting there in my bank account could still be there in theory in cash, right? What do you think that $40 buys me today after 30 odd years? Maybe a beer and a couple of hamburgers. And I'm thinking, damn, I put a lot more energy and time into that 8-hour day than the energy that's in a couple of hamburgers and a beer, right? You need to put your time and energy, you need to store it in an instrument that will maintain its value in energy terms over time and space. That's why I love Bitcoin so much. As an engineer, it is digital energy. It's storing the value of your energy that you expend today for use and consumption in the future on a basis that number goes up over time mathematically. Is it 100% certain? Absolutely not. but I certainly like the odds of that type of system versus a fiat system that is 100% certain to debase. You cannot argue with that. In an inflationary environment or a deflationary environment, the fiat currency is 100% certain to debase. Don't store your value or your time and energy in that instrument. That is foolhardy.
Absolutely not. And I like the way you put that. I always think of Bitcoin as trading time now for time later. It's this perfect way to store monetary energy and time with no impairment cost except that of the energy expended by the network as a whole and the miners. Do you have any takes on the correlation between the price and the hash rate? Do you follow the
Oh,
Bitcoin hash rate
100%.
and what's
Look, I'm in the
happening in
Bitcoin
mining?
mining business. Bitcoin mining is a bad business to begin with, and it's even worse right now as the price of Bitcoin goes lower, but hash goes higher. I mean, so when I say I'm in the business, that's not altogether true. I'm in the energy business, or we are power providers, and some of our off-takers are Bitcoin miners. We plan to do some for ourselves as well, but I've never been enamored with the Bitcoin mining process in itself if you don't control your own input costs, which is primarily the energy that you use to mine Bitcoin. So our integrated value proposition is we own power plants and we mine Bitcoin. And you can get value for those power plants, particularly when you can kick back the power to the grid when the grid is at a deficit, and you can get paid peaking types of rates for 5% of the year, and the other 95% of the year you're mining Bitcoin when the grid does not need your power. So Bitcoin solves that. Bitcoin is a beautiful engineering development, proof of work that over time people will come to appreciate as actually stabilizing our grids. That'll be another education process, but Bitcoin mining, where you are captive to a utility that can either interrupt you or pass through tariffs at their own volition, that's a tough business. And it's gotten tougher with the price of Bitcoin going down as the hash rate goes up.
So go ahead, Q.
I'm just curious on specifically asking someone who's involved in the mining business and as well using your own energy to supply the energy used for the miners. What, if any, consideration are the happenings in your process as far as strategy and implementation of miners when you're affording it a holding strategy and you're sort of going to keep all of the Bitcoin that you mine versus let me sell off what I need to continue my expenses? Where
you're a couple of steps in front of me, Q. Maybe we'll hire you as our strategist on that front. Okay. We have a date that we're going to be self-mining in the future. It's not for public consumption, but the point is this: we are trying to reduce the risk of Bitcoin mining by at least controlling our input costs. We still won't control our output revenue because that revenue number is set by the price of Bitcoin in the market. But think of the business as itself. If you don't control your input costs and you don't control your output revenue, man, there's not a lot of things you can control in there, is there? And I'm not certain I want to jump into that type of business with both feet. So what I would say is, yeah, it's a part of a risk management process. Will we use instruments available to us in the market to make our output revenue more certain and fungible? Yeah, but we're going to save some. Like, I like creating Bitcoin at $11,000 when it's trading at 35,000 bucks Canadian. Okay, so 11,000 Canadian, 35,000 Canadian. That model still makes sense. It just doesn't make as much sense when it's at 11,000 and it's trading at 75,000 Canadian. You know what I'm saying? So these are some of the risks that are in the market. The market's getting smarter. By the way, some of the sell pressure in Bitcoin comes when the miners realize that maybe they owned and held too much Bitcoin, and then they had to sell because, the market's not giving them credit for holding Bitcoin now. So what do? They flush it at the worst time in the market as well. Human nature is exactly that, right? When everyone's yelling, you should be in there selling. And when everyone's crying, you should be in there buying. But what do most people do? Most people are, when everyone's yelling, they're in there buying. And when everyone's crying, they're in there selling, right? Like, it's so messed up. You got to understand that emotion leads you to make your worst trades ever. Separate emotion from a trade. Do it on a on a calculated risk-adjusted basis. Discipline is key to managing risk. If you own Bitcoin now and you're upset because the price has gone down so much, the only thing I could say is, guys, I'm sorry, but perhaps you own a touch too much. There's no other way. And then you could say, well, I'm not really that upset. Then I'll say, put a cork in it. Let's talk in a couple of years then, and try and ignore these price fluctuations. My best bet is risk markets continue to sell off. If risk markets continue to sell off, Bitcoin is going lower. If Bitcoin's going lower and it already hurts, I hate to say this, but it might hurt a little bit more in a few days or weeks. And I don't want that. But markets always move in the direction that causes the most pain to the most people. Everybody's long equities right now. Everybody's long crypto, and everybody's getting carved a new asshole. Okay. Welcome to markets.
The first bear market for a lot of people is not a fun time, to say the least.
Wait till you get in a real bear market. Wait until things have dropped 80%. Okay. Wait until you have actually sat in a risk chair in 2008 and 9 when the world was ending. Okay. Bear Stearns stock had gone from $140 a share down to $2 a share. Okay. Do some math on that. And by the way, when JP Morgan bought them at $2 a share, it was really worth -50. Okay. So JP Morgan just bailed them out. The equity fools had no clue. And by the way, who was telling you to buy Bear Stearns stock? Jim Cramer. Jim Cramer, Dick Fuld, the president of or CEO of Lehman Brothers, made a famous statement in 2008. He says, I am going to make the shorts hurt. And that's why I am here. I don't think they hurt too badly shorting your stock, Mr. Fuld. They understood mathematics. And when the financial system is levered as much as it is, the equity is nothing but a little option that gets vaporized very, very quickly. You try and teach that to equity guys over time, and they remember it for about 6 months, and then they're back to the casino, and they're like, oh, equities grow to the moon, right? Trees grow to the moon. No, they don't grow to the moon when the fertilizer, which is called the credit market, isn't fertilizing the equities. And right now, well, they're not getting a lot of fertilizer, and you're seeing what's happening.
So one thing that I've noticed a ton with newer investors and newer traders in particular is this idea of, oh, it's going to the moon. It can't stop going. Oh, it's $10 a share. It's going to go to 50 without consideration of what is the market cap? What does a $10 share stock look like when it is $50 a share? Are you really saying this $10 billion company is now all of a sudden going to be worth $50 billion?
Yeah, yeah.
So that is another consideration that I think just gets lost in this.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, look, the one reason that Bitcoin can go to a market cap that I think is close to 50 trillion, which would make it by far and away, it would make it 10 times bigger than Apple. Okay. Why? First of all, it's way more important than Apple. But secondly, because it draws addressable market from bonds, real estate, debt, equities, every other short volatility asset. Okay. Because why? Well, because it's a long volatility asset. So therefore, money should flow to that insurance product. Yeah, I know it's not showing itself very well lately, but again, we're only 13 years old. Okay. Wait until real money actually understands the beauty of Bitcoin, and then they will be running to buy it at times like this. Why? Because it's your insurance product or your insurance protection.
Hey, Greg, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. While you're speaking, we're going to give away some Bitcoin on screen and especially on the YouTube side of things. So everyone that's watching from Twitter, hop over hop over to the YouTube side and catch some free Bitcoin in the chat. And thanks for liking and subscribing for this awesome knowledge that Mr. Greg Foss has been dropping on us this last hour. We've got about 10 minutes left, if that's all right with you,
Sure.
Greg. Yeah, and I'll let Q. Do you have some final questions?
Yeah, I want to go back to two things in particular that you've brought up. Firstly, this idea of let's get Canada to get on board with backing their fiat currency with Bitcoin. What does that system, in your perfect scenario, you are making all the decisions here, Greg. No one is going to question you. What does that system look like? Are we still going to be printing? Is there a cap on how much can get printed? How much is sort of the limit? What are the boundaries you would like them to play with?
Well, the elephant in the room is the outstanding debt, right? And you are going to need to print money to avoid defaulting on that outstanding debt. Now, that outstanding debt is going to lose purchasing power over time as the money that you're getting paid back in gets debased over time. That's why bonds are such a horrible investment. First of all, you're earning a below inflation adjusted rate of return. The last time inflation was at these levels, the 10-year bond yielded a 3% real return, which meant in today's environment, interest rates would be at 10% in the US 10-year. And they're actually under 2% in our current manipulated environment. But nonetheless, these are contractual obligations, right? And it's not, the world's not going to take a fiat issuing nation lightly that defaults on its debt, much like they don't take Argentina lightly when it defaults. It just happens to be a serial defaulter, but it's never happened in a G7 nation. So I think that you're still going to have fiat printing to solve the outstanding debt. And why is that? Well, guess who owns all the outstanding debt? Pension funds and pension plans that represent the savings and retirement accounts of our citizens, right? So there's going to be political pressure there. Doesn't mean I tell you to buy bonds. Bonds are a horrible, horrible risk-adjusted investment right now, which leaves equities that over time have to go up in order that pension plans don't become underfunded. That's why the Fed is going to have to take their foot off the brake and understand that they need to rescue equity markets once again. But how does the system look? I don't actually know. All I do know is the status quo doesn't work, and we need to put in place a backstop that will allow us to at least experiment. So Michael Saylor, a guy who's incredibly smart, way smarter than me, believes in the case of the USA, if the USA were to embrace Bitcoin as a store of value on their Federal Reserve balance sheets, it would actually make the US dollar a better fiat currency. And I understand his logic there. I'll just tell you, markets don't always move in exactly that direction, maybe in the long run, but in the short run, there's a lot of toing and froing. But I think that thesis holds water. And therefore, if it holds water in the USA, should it hold water in Canada? Yeah, it should. Canada's still, again, a little rounding error compared to the United States. But if we did it and the experiment proved, I'll use the word profitable or proved smart in Canada, then game on. Then every single central bank will have to employ the same strategy. And what does that do for the price of Bitcoin? It becomes self-fulfilling. It's game theory. One country does it, then another country does it. And the countries that aren't doing it are like, well, these countries are doing it, maybe I should do some. And then it becomes self-fulfilling. And then it solves the problem that energy always goes up in fiat dollar terms. Energy prices can go down in Bitcoin terms. And since Bitcoin is digital energy, that's where technology will actually show its true colors. When energy prices as priced in Bitcoin, not in fiat dollars, actually decline. And these are some unbelievably beautiful solutions that take time to flower or grow. But I'm an optimist generally. I'm an optimist, and I want this to happen, and I believe it can happen. Am I certain? No. I mean, with every single phrase that comes out of our prime minister's mouth with things like well, the budget will balance itself, and forgive me if I don't care about monetary policy, I just stick a fork in my eye, right? Like, this guy should not be managing a country. If he was managing a company, he would be fired on the spot for avoiding fiduciary responsibility for the stakeholders in that company, right? I run a company and I believe the budget is going to balance itself. Excuse me, sir, here's the door. You failed mathematics. So,
I have a slightly off topic question on that. What, in your opinion, is the difference between a really big, a country and like a well-armed, really big corporation?
Sorry, when you say well-armed, what does that mean?
I mean, they've got a standing army to fight off entropy and to keep the USA alive, Canada, all of these. I struggle to see the difference sometimes between just like the largest corporations that are out there and countries who just have a monopoly on a lot of the energy production and the warfare and the violence.
I'm going to answer that question from an optimist viewpoint. Certainly in free market capitalism, anybody who has money can compete, and generally it's the central banks who have more printed money than anybody else, but certainly a lot of corporate treasurers who are free to make decisions on behalf of their stakeholders have to be considering this same mathematics that Michael Saylor went through. And then it's a competition of the smartest, and it's a competition of those who survive and reap the gains for their constituents. Now, the constituents could be shareholders in the case of corporations, or stakeholders, bondholders and equity holders, or they can be citizens in the case of countries. And yeah, the race will be on. Like, I live in Canada. We have two official languages, right? We have French and English. My wife is French Canadian. I love the French culture. But in honesty, we should be learning Spanish here in Canada, okay? We should be learning Spanish so that we can talk to El Salvador, who will be a more prosperous country on a per capita basis than Canadians. It's my opinion. I could be wrong, but El Salvador has figured this game out. Yeah, I know he's getting a lot of heat right now, and he's wearing it. Did you see that? Saylor wore a Real Tahini's ball cap. Hey, did you see that? Michael said, Real Tahini's is a great restaurant in Canada. I know the owner, Ali. He's just a brilliant young man. And then Bukele was wearing a McDonald's hat. Did you see that? So look, these guys at least have, one of the things you learn on Wall Street and Bay Street, when you trade for 30 years, if you can't poke fun at yourself for making a call that hasn't panned out in the short term, you're not going to survive, brother and sister, because the markets move in directions that causes the most pain to the most people. And you can pretend you're having fun right now at the expense or the schadenfreude of other markets that are getting carved as well. Look, I wish I could say this to people who are hurting right now, and I don't want it to sound flippant. I'd love to talk to you in 20 years. That's all I can say. I am planning for 20 years. I don't know if I'll be alive that long, but I have 3 kids that I'm pretty certain will be. So I'm putting in place insurance policies that I'll look back 20 years from now and say, damn, at least somebody in the Foss family did some mathematics and understood the purest store of value ever created, deserves a little bit of allocation of my net worth. And I'm not going to tell you what my holding percentage is, but I'll tell you it's more than 0, and it is not 100%, okay? It's just the way I manage risk. And I encourage people to take the long view, lower your time preference. If you have to go and work at McDonald's and Real Tahini's, well, there's worse places you can work. Congrats to Saylor and Bukele for having the, the intestinal fortitude to poke some fun at themselves. And fuck you, Steve Hanke. You're a fucking disgrace, okay? Go pound sand, you old fucking squid. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much. That's Greg Foss, everybody. Great to have you on. Yeah, would love to have you on again sometime.
All the time, boys. I can't wait to see you in Miami anytime you want. I just am trying to help people and educate them and understand that nothing goes up in a straight line. Bitcoin is still a fraction of what I think its potential price is, which is over $2 million a Bitcoin in today's dollars. Just run some probability analysis, figure out what your right exposure to that outcome is, and we'll talk in 20 years. But you and I will talk in hopefully less than 20 months, and I'll see you in Miami. All right. So we'll go that way. And by the way, Steve Hanke, you can find me in Miami. Okay. I dare you to come to Miami, you fucking old fuck. Okay. Thank you so much. You guys.
Greg, it was good.
Well, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. See ya. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Catch you later. All right, guys, there you have it. Get your tickets to the Bitcoin 2022 conference. See Greg Foss and possibly Steve Hanke if he shows up. Are they going to throw down? I don't know. I hope so. It sounds like it. You can get 21% off your Bitcoin conference tickets with the promo code YTMAG. I can't stress this enough. This promo code will disappear. All of these discounts on your tickets will disappear very soon. You need to get your tickets today. Figure out your flights, hotels, all that shit later. Get your tickets to the Bitcoin 2022 conference today. Come hang out with Greg Foss, myself, Q, everybody else in Bitcoin that is going to be there. It's going to be an amazing time. Q, I don't know if you want to speak to the conference a little bit here.
The conference itself is just so much fun. Like the energy there, everyone just wants to see Bitcoin succeed. They want to get to know you and want to help you succeed. I will continue to pound this drum because it's how I ended up working at Bitcoin Magazine and getting a job just in Bitcoin, getting involved within the community, was putting myself down there, putting faces to a lot of the different Twitter, I don't even know what to call them anymore, thumbnails, if you will. I don't want to call them NFTs because I know not everyone is doing that, nor do I want to give Twitter that credit. But it is, if you are even slightly invested in this community, if you are slightly invested in Bitcoin, this is the event to be at. This is our Disneyland. This is our Mardi Gras. You're just going to have the worst FOMO, but I guess you could tune in on YouTube because we'll have some special plans for viewers as well.
All right, Q, I gave you one job, and that was to promote the Bitcoin 2022 conference, and you brought up NFTs and fucking Mardi Gras, bro. I love it, man.
On Mardi Gras. I'm gonna bring beads. I'm gonna throw beads around in Miami. So come catch one of the beads that I throw. You do not need a show.
All right. All right. I guess Bitcoin 2022 is Bitcoiners Mardi Gras. We'll see you all there. We're gonna take a short break, and we'll be back with Nolan for an episode of the Breakup. It's gonna be exciting stuff. Nolan is great at kind of educational short segments about Bitcoin and just kind of the broader global politics, a little bit conspiratorial. Very well spoken, very excited to have him on. So a short break and then we'll be back with Nolan.
Not going to be able to take any questions from you guys. I'm not getting any sound. That's okay. Hi, everyone. Nolan, Bitcoiner, another episode of The Breakup. A little bit of a trouble today, coming to you from a different secret location. We're moving around a little bit, but we're in a different place today. And, a lot of crazy news going on. And that's what this show really tries to focus on. We try to look at the psychological relationships that go into making dollars. We look at the psychological relationships that go into making Bitcoin, and we contrast those. And we take the news of the day and filter it through these two frames and try to get a result that we think, I think anyway, is useful when it comes to the connections we have with money and dollars and Bitcoin and all the rest. And on a weekend like this, it's really difficult to take which news story we should follow. Everything seems to be coming at once. We've got looks like the drumbeat of war is happening in Eastern Europe. We see all kinds of stuff in Russia. Looks like America has got another supply chain problem. I was pretty happy towards Christmas. It looked like we had solved the problems in Los Angeles, but I guess not. They're right back and worse than ever. We've got COVID protests all around the world. They seem to be getting even worse than ever. More cities, more people, more violence. We've got a president that gave a speech where he really looked degenerated, more than I think we've seen, more than I think even people who are not a fan were prepared for. It was pretty stark. And then of course, Bitcoin, what are you gonna say? There's all kinds of things that are going on. You get all kinds of takes. Today, what I hope to offer with a frame of all this, and we're gonna talk more about the Bitcoin situation for sure, but what I hope to offer, what I set out to offer was a frame that's more useful than just zoom out. I think in the end, it might just be zoom out. I think it's close enough to real that you can get it, but maybe if you're wondering what just zoom out means, maybe if you had more questions about just zoom out, maybe this is good for you. So, or maybe it's not. Please leave feedback and let me know if this is more beneficial at the end than just zoom out. I'll try to frame it up with just zoom out at the end, and we'll see if this stands out and has some benefit beyond just zoom out, which you hear over and over again in these crashes. And I think it's a really useful frame, just zoom out, definitely. But I hope to explain why just zoom out exactly is important. So today, if we're going to talk about psychology, we're going to talk about all that's going on in the world and these relationships. I'm going to start with one of the best psychological frames you can offer from what many consider one of the fathers, anyway, of modern psychology, and that's Carl Jung. Carl Jung talked about something called synchronicity. Synchronicity is basically when you see two things that are coincidental, there is no cause and effect between them, but that the coincidence is greater than can be explained by pure chance. It looks like we've learned more and more that coincidences, even strange coincidences, are pretty common actually, and that you can explain away a lot of synchronicity and this idea of parallel things happening, coincidental things happening. What's really important in the case of Carl Jung is he used it as a method to combat anxiety. What he said was you can look at the whole world through a cause and effect lens, but that these particular coincidences do have meaning for people, and that meaning can really help them overcome things that are sort of beyond their control necessarily. He used one great example of, and this was the one he believed his whole life, he had a patient as a psychologist that he had a lot of trouble healing, all kinds of anxiety, trying to heal the mind with the mind type of thing, trying to get over it, trying to think through it, trying to get past it. And he kept saying sort of your ego's in the way, it's not going to work. And she'd had a dream about a golden beetle, and on that very day, a beetle that would not be native to Europe flew into the room and like literally landed in his hands against the time at which it should be happening and all that. And the woman saw it and she says, well, I have to just believe in these coincidences now. This is real. Someone is sending me a message. Now, Carl Jung got the idea of synchronicity and this getting away from anxiety, getting away from a cause and effect world. He got the idea from the I Ching, which is one of the most important Chinese texts, one of the most important texts in the world. I Ching was a prediction tool, a prediction machine, really. And when it was first designed, it was made with, I guess not even first, it went through a bunch of iterations, but they still do it with these sticks. And the sticks end up forming these hexagrams, these six broken sticks, single sticks, in arrangements of six sticks, six. So you hear the difference. And in the end, they said it could explain everything in the world and that this mathematical formula was an excellent prediction tool for, and could explain everything in the world. So people kind of, would look at that, especially early Western science, and say, I can't explain everything in the world. It's a bunch of sticks. But it turned out that these sticks and this system here predicted binary code. It predicted everything that we built the internet off of, everything that we've built the computer age off of. So their idea that you can explain the universe through these patterns is actually true in the end, because we used it to build everything we have in the digital world. Ones and zeros, it turns into binary code. It turns into ones and zeros. The dotted lines could be thought of as a 0, and the single line could be thought of as a 1. And you can basically, truly, like I Ching said, explain everything in the world through this model. And it ended up being really important for Jung, and it was actually used throughout the whole era of quantum physics becoming the predominant way of viewing the world in the mid part of the century, because before it was all mechanical physics. And this all dovetailed with the transition from mechanical physics over to quantum physics. So this was happening everywhere, and it happened in psychology as well. So just to understand the contrast again, Freud would have said something along the lines of, we have all these sexual impulses and they manifest themselves in different cause and effect ways, you become a pervert or whatever. What Jung was saying is, it's not exactly that. There is our conscious, which is seeing things as they are, but there's another layer, what he called the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious was our wills, an unspoken language that seemed to connect us. The interesting thing, again, in the end about the I Ching is this, and this is where everything about the predictive model becomes important, everything about simulation theory even comes from. With very long numbers, with I Ching, you're actually able to see with certain predictions the manifestation of intention, right? So there's a way to measure the deviation from pure probability against, it could even be rolling dice. You could roll dice. If you roll them enough and you have an intention to produce something, we have seen it manifest itself mathematically, empirically, proven. Huge delta between what you'd expect in probabilistic terms and what you end up getting. They're not the same thing. The manifestation of intention becomes obvious in this case. And I don't know enough about the math to prove it. Please go and look at it yourself. But basically you can see, and it becomes really obvious when you make low probability predictions. So go back to the zoom out argument and look at Bitcoiners. Bitcoiners made a prediction already 10 years ago that it would be a global macro asset. At the time, insane, like crazy, right? No one's working for it, no one's there. And of course now it's a legitimate thing. There's no denying it's a real global macro asset with a role to play in current incredibly complex financial contortions and change, right? So the book of change, literally the book of change, is where you even get the dynamics that go into the yin and yang theory. That's where it comes from. That it isn't a cause and effect, that there's a messiness to it, that there is a certain part of it that isn't going to give you the clear answer, but is going to show you the direction. Will show you directionally where things are headed. So what I thought is, if we would take this prediction model, and it's always why we think predictions are so important on this show and in general. Bitcoiners made predictions a long time ago. What I see here in 2022 is a world that a lot of Bitcoiners already predicted. Maybe not the pandemic part, but certainly the macroeconomic environment was foretold a long time ago by Bitcoiners. So now let's just take a look. We see all this happening and people are saying, oh, well, Bitcoin's getting smashed in the face and all these really bad things are happening in the world. What are we going to do? Well, let's take that predictive model. We're not going to do it with sticks and I Ching. We'll just try and look at it here. But let's just look at the probabilistic outcomes now. Let's look at how different probability has become. So when I look, for example, at COVID, when I look at all this arguments, people are afraid there's going to be mandates around the world. It's an excuse to make us all train to wear masks and then get an app, and then an app is going to control our life and all this stuff. But I saw on a TV program on a Friday night, Barry Weiss, who I think is a pretty important voice these days, getting an applause from what I would consider a liberal audience in general on the Bill Maher show on HBO. And that wouldn't be what a lot of people would expect. You saw a hugely liberal audience supporting this idea. And that was sort of against what you would be told would be a typical Democrat thought. You can even then apply that same distinction to war, perhaps, with Russia. Do you think in this current environment there is any leader capable of mobilizing Americans to support a war against Russia? I don't know. I mean, you can hear it on the news. There's a lot of people on either side saying there's a lot of trouble. But like anything, Americans are not exactly as opposite as everyone says. I don't think that a lot of Republicans really believe in the end, or are going to be convinced that all Democrats are Antifa people, right? They're not. And the other way is true. I don't think a lot of Democrats are going to be convinced that all Republicans are fascist. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to settle in anything great. It just means we're not going to be pulled to either side of that. So you've got the makings of what Bitcoin predicted would be a sweet spot, American anarchy. And American anarchy doesn't have to mean we're killing each other and eating each other at all. It just means you're like responsible for your keys, but you're also responsible for being civilized and helping your neighbor and helping other people and extending your own personal freedom to its limit, but basically extending it to the limit where you ain't my boss and I ain't your boss and we're all just getting along. You're not my bank. I don't have to ask you for anything. And we're in that world where we're not subjugated to the power authority of another person, right? So when I see it, Bitcoin worldview, we're getting closer and closer to what Bitcoiners said would happen, far closer to that result than we are the other way around, going backwards and reinstalling all the systems that are in place today and revitalizing them, right? So what we're saying is entropy has come into those previous systems. Clown world, right? Clown world theory is a real thing, right? I'm a proponent of clown world theory. I don't believe in I think there are people with bad intentions for sure, and I think they might have been around for a long time too, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is they're really dumb, right? There's a lot of dumb people out there. That show Veep is more accurate about what's going on in Washington DC. If anyone has never seen Veep, it's more accurate. The one with Elaine from Seinfeld, that show is more accurate about what's going on in politics than The West Wing from the 1990s. I worked in executive level politics for a long time. They're morons. They're dumb people. Like anyone, like any industry, really smart people, really dumb people. The institutions are hard to wield. They produce results that you'll never understand. An example I like to use in the Biden administration is when there was that news at the beginning that they had fired a bunch of staffers for smoking pot, right? Might have been true. It made the news, and a lot of right-wing people said, "Oh, look how dumb that Biden is. He loved pot, now he fired all the pot heads," and da 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 da. Well, that's not what happened at all. Probably some dumb committee of people got together and produced a result that no human being would ever understand. Only a committee could come up with a dumb solution like that. Fire them, right? So it probably happened, but it doesn't mean it's the responsibility of one person. It just shows the institutions are decrepit and not going to produce results that we would recognize as, human readable. So when we look at all of these problems in the world today, and supply chains being the one that I really want to mention because it's important for what I think is that long tail news that we have to look at and then we have to focus on, and that is more about the manifestation of the intentions of Bitcoiners that will have a larger impact on the future than any of the news I just mentioned. And that was Intel last week saying they would create the low voltage ASIC chips. That's not even necessarily just great for Bitcoin. That's great for the whole world of mining in this way, of distributed computer systems that have one specific job, in the case of Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin. But to be able to have a cloud of these ASIC chips is a completely new way to organize networks and has a lot of potential and a lot of promise. And Bitcoin is really showing the way on how this works. Now, you can see this as just this little tiny news story, but in the end, it's actually an answer to American supply chain problems. The industry is pivoting. It's finding ways to solve these problems, and it's bringing chip making back to America, which I think in the whole scheme of things right now is really important for that outcome for American anarchy to really work, right? If you've got chips being made here, if you've got domestic production of things again in America, America can sort of focus on itself and getting over its problems and coming together in ways that make sense for the country. Now, when you look at these predictions and you run it through that model, again, the contrast for me that's so important is if we follow the line where we're afraid of what's about to happen, we're not going to win this fight, and what has to happen is we actually have to go to war with Russia, I guess. We have to actually fight each other every single day. We have to continue all this stuff. It could happen. I mean, supply chains are not good. I don't think we're going to be creating as much stuff and consuming as much stuff as we used to. That's all. There's still pain. It's not that easy. But the long tail of it, when we zoom out, if you will, when you zoom out and you see what's actually going on, you see that America is solving super important problems, and Bitcoin is at the heart of it. Bitcoin is at the heart of this chip repatriation, and it's at the heart of a lot of changes that I think will guarantee that the clown world simply can't perpetuate into the future. People don't want it. They're not going to choose it. They're going to choose to end those relationships and do simple things like save their money in Bitcoin. So that's today's episode, I Ching, synchronicity. And another thing I want to mention about the synchronicity part, this crash, all this stuff happened on 1/21/21, right? One word of caution about synchronicity and finding patterns and I Ching. It's actually the start of early onset of psychosis, right? So you can go too far with it, right? You can go too far in finding meaning between these different symbols. So be careful of that. But other than the worry of psychosis, have fun, look at these patterns, and certainly apply prediction models, because they help you both understand what you meant when you said it, and they can actually help change the world. We can re-author the simulation with our intention.
I like that. I have to say, yeah, I totally agree.
I gotta run, guys. I don't get any audio on this.
All right. Catch you later. Thank you. All right, Nolan's dropping off. We got the great Mark Goodwin here. I think he caught the tail end of that, which is pretty interesting. I have to say, I do agree with that. However, in the case of Bitcoin, I often say that too much looking for too many patterns to try to predict the future is probably futile. I don't know that you can tell the difference between a chart and a random walk. Most traders can't. I would suggest not maybe acting on the patterns that you see, but using the patterns to rather explain things retroactively. I think it's a better strategy, and you won't get too full of your own. You won't let your own self get in the way of your future profits in Bitcoin. We're gonna go to a short break actually, and then we'll be right back with you, Mark. We're gonna quickly shill the Bitcoin 2022 conference again, because guys, this is the last few days here that you can get 21% off your tickets with the promo code YTMAG. Check the link in the description to go buy your tickets to the conference today. We are back with the great Mark Goodwin. Mark, how's it going today?
Hi, everybody. Oh, bloody good day. Bloody good. Having a lot of fun. Yeah, how are you, Alex? What's going on? Hey, Chris. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, yeah, anytime, man. I'm thrilled. We missed you last week, but you came back on a great day. We had Greg Foss in here. Did you catch any of that?
I actually was talking to some of your friends at the magazine this morning. So I
yeah.
I'm gonna watch it on the replay for sure. And what I caught of Nolan's was really interesting too. So very excited. I know I love the Foss, man. He's a bunch of energy, and I just agree with his macro. I mean, I'm not but bonds are dead, and buy Bitcoin. And if you can say it with a funny, excited, passionate Canadian accent, all the better. So yeah, no, I'm a big fan of
yeah, man,
Greg for sure.
Oh man, he broke all his New Year's resolutions. He was going off on Hanky and Peter Schiff, cursing him out. We got great clips coming for you, just absolutely priceless. He comes up with the best like weird turn of phrase insults I've ever heard of. He like called him a squid. It was so funny.
Yeah, they got their own language up there, and clearly there's something going on in the water up there, because there's some really good Canadian Bitcoiners like Brad and Jeff Booth and Foss, and I know there's a bunch more. So yeah, there's.
Are you talking about Brad Mills?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like Brad Mills. Nice guy.
Yeah, he's a nice dude.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, no, interesting day today. I mean, I think my favorite tweet was Barry Silbert saying it's funny because there were no signs, which I think is just such a perfect role. I mean, I don't really trade anymore day to day. I don't leverage or do anything like that. Just, I've humbly, slowly add on days like today, on double digit down days. I'll add what I got.
Sorry to cut you off. Was your Cash App working today? Cash App was down for a lot of people. I couldn't buy. I had to have my girlfriend buy Bitcoin for me because my Cash App, I couldn't get in.
I got in on not to show equities because I don't think it's a good idea, but I did find some marathons for about $19. So it worked for me for that. I didn't buy Bitcoin on Cash App today, but I got through on Strike. I kind of just did it for fun. I don't usually play with minor stocks, but it was just such an obvious bottom.
Interesting.
But yeah, no,
I haven't touched equities probably about a year now. I think I was trading options, absolutely crushing. Did not want to get a big head about it, so I just stopped. I had like some very good trades, and then I was like, I'm just gonna do all Bitcoin for a while. So tell me about your strategy. Do you diversify? Are you kind of a Bitcoin only? If you want to share, you don't have to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely wouldn't have said that if you hadn't asked about Cash App, because I definitely don't really know what I'm doing. But I was listening to Q last week and talking about Mara a little bit, and I don't know. I saw some interesting things with Fred Thiel saying some things to Gary Gensler on Twitter about having a good new year and everything after they just got slapped with a subpoena. So I'm more just kind of playing with it. It's completely play money. I bought like definitely like under $100. So it's just kind of just for fun. But no, I've been 99 point X Bitcoin for like, yeah, at least well over a year for sure. If not almost 2 years. So yeah, I have a couple other things. I got some metal somewhere and
like some physical metal.
Yeah. And then I have
same here.
But again,
I can't get rid of it. I don't know how to sell it. I've tried to sell it like 3 times. It's hard.
Yeah, I assume I'll sell it to some like electronics manufacturer at some point. And then I have like musical equipment, but yeah, no, Bitcoin for sure. I mean, any other thing that I'm involved in is usually just for fun, or like a little experiment. But yeah, no, I definitely don't have an equities plan. No.
I mean, not altogether surprised, but it was a little different tone today. Usually Q is our voice of, I guess you would say, reason, if you want to call Bitcoiners crazy. Usually Q is the level-headed, diversified voice of reason. My argument against this is that kind of traditional, like boomerish economic advice to diversify. If you're going to do it, you have to have wealth to diversify. I think that consolidation in this case is what will make you very wealthy. But I also think the reason I'm 100% in Bitcoin is not to get wealthy in fiat terms, is because I don't believe that I own anything else outside of Bitcoin. Everything else can be taken from you and is taken from you. So it's kind of I don't know where you stand on that, but maybe I can see Foss's perspective. If I had like a career of trading on volatility and had like all these assets, then maybe I'd be more diversified. But
yeah, I mean, I definitely I think pretty classic, like total addressable market. I think a Bitcoin has the greatest. It's that Paul Tudor Jones. It's the fastest horse in the race. It has the most room to run over anything. I don't trust the stock market really. I don't even really trust my marathon play to hardly call it that. It's kind of literally, I'm kind of just doing it for fun. But
so when you say you don't trust it, what do you mean exactly?
I mean, well, what you were saying, it's like, share dilution. You don't actually own anything. Who's to say? I mean, I honestly don't even really, I've done very, very little research into what, how many shares they have and how it even works. I've just been following it
Yeah.
because I've been following miner stocks for the last few months, just because I think it's a really interesting space. Go for
And
it.
at the end of the day, your assets beholden to one person or maybe even a board of people. And should they catch COVID or something, there goes all your money. And
Yeah.
people in Tesla, like
I mean, and also literally Mara was slapped with a subpoena by the SEC like not too long ago, and that's certainly not resolved for committing some kind of securities violation. So I have a theory in the market that, not entirely my own theory, but just sort of what I think is kind of happening now. There was a Yahoo report that just came out that said the Biden administration is getting ready to sign an executive order on cryptocurrencies in February, which I think is a really big deal. And a lot of people been talking about it in the greater Bitcoin community. And I'll give a hat tip to our wise friend Hodel Magoo here again. He had sort of this idea that they were going to wait. They're going to say, okay, here we go. We're going to raise rates a bunch. Market tanks. Obviously, macros look terrible for a while. I've kind of been like sheepishly like, I'm not going to do anything really about it. I got my rent paid, but otherwise, I mean, I haven't even come close to touching my cold storage. I didn't even really touch my savings, just kind of my checkings, which is still in Bitcoin because, I'm overexposed. But okay, we're gonna say that we're gonna hike rates, which I just don't buy it. And especially now, I mean, everything just imploded today. All the FANG stocks just like completely just bled out. Pretty amazing. Circuit breakers on abound. And I mean, I think that was going to happen when we're in this free market or free money environment of 0% interest rates. There has to be regulation though coming for the greater cryptocurrency space. This unregistered securities. But again, they don't want to hurt retail. That's like their number one job. Is the SEC is to protect retail investors, not just nuke them and eliminate billions and billions and billions of dollars of wealth from the market. So you could say that perhaps they set up a scenario where they said that they're going to raise rates, scare everybody, spook everybody, everything tanks. And now from here, now they can come out with this executive order. They can come out with some regulation. They can continue to sort of do their job without getting blamed for the crash because the crash already happened. Now, again, a lot of that's speculation, of course, but I mean, I think that this crash was coming. I don't know if we bottomed. 33 seemed like a pretty obvious buy. I got a little bit in there, but I could see it ranging back up to like 38 or something, and then having another big liquidation push down. But I think the next big wick down will be a pretty big generational bottom. I would be buying down there for sure.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I'm going to keep buying, but I do think we can definitely go lower. 33 doesn't have any psychological significance to me, and I know that might sound like hawkish, but it's I really do think it just comes down to what, the psychological price that people are going to break at. I mean, outside of these like waterfall events that are triggered by like AI algorithms, I think there's absolutely room to go lower, and I don't mind if it does. It's just a great time to accumulate. Your Bitcoin stack only goes up if you're doing it right. I mean, I don't really know anyone who's out there spending a lot of Bitcoin right now. I don't know people who are like selling out of fear. So I think everybody's in agreement. This is just a opportunity of a lifetime right now. I mean, because imagine that the flip side of this. Imagine if, a year ago today, everyone's calling for 200, even 300K. I saw people put up calls on for 2022. And it's like, if we had gone to those numbers, I mean, most people you can buy Bitcoin at any price, but you'd be priced out of some like pretty life-changing wealth on that run up.
100%. I mean, the price of Bitcoin is not its value, of course, like we all know that. It's just the price that it's being sold right now. But yeah, that's, I was in a sort of, the Bay Area Bitcoiners Telegram earlier today and was like, hey, remember when we were all talking about 100K New Year's Day? It's like, hey, well, this is, I mean, I wasn't saying that, but I will say I did think we would break six figures with the momentum we had going into 2021. Obviously I was wrong and I will gladly eat that humble pie, but yeah, it's like these bears are good. Like these, like you're completely right. Like right now, the price of a Bitcoin is about like the average salary of a US worker. It's in that like 35 range. So you actually can get a significant Bitcoin. Like if you want Bitcoin to stay here, because we know where it's going in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
I think most of the world needs Bitcoin to stay here, and they should be praying that the institutions don't use this opportunity, that Apple doesn't use this opportunity to announce that they're putting Bitcoin in reserve.
Yeah. I mean, and that could happen at any moment. And, that's kind of why I've been so cautious recently, sort of both ways. It's like, I don't want to be underexposed. I thought we would go down, but I was like, I'm not going to take the tax hit to put myself in a position because I really kind of said, we're a tweet away from moon, and we're a tweet away from liquidation event, and that's just kind of where we're at right now. There's so much leverage and so much speculation, and like an Amazon or an Apple or a Microsoft or one of these big companies kind of just or a nation state. We're actually at the nation state level now, and I think all of that stuff is pretty inevitable. So yeah, definitely take this. Well, nothing's inevitable, but pretty likely, hopeful. So yeah, take this opportunity. It's like, I was really thankful. I got to watch 2017 and how crazy that was. And then I got 2 solid years of bear to learn about Bitcoin and to stack. And like, I don't want to dox myself too much, but I remember hitting these goals of accumulation that I never thought I would be able to get.
Yeah.
And I'm not a whale or anything like that, but there were moments of where I couldn't believe I got that. I couldn't believe I got this. And I'm talking like small, like a tenth of a coin, these little things that
I mean, these days people should absolutely have 1 Bitcoin in their sights. If you don't have 1 Bitcoin yet and you're new to this space, make that a goal. You can do it. Any
100%.
You change jobs. You know what I mean? I don't know what advice to give people, but if you're not making enough money to accomplish that within a year, I don't know what to tell you. You need to value yourself and raise the value you give to the world a little higher. You don't have to be stuck. I quit a job at a grocery store when I was fighting. I'd worked there for 3 years, and just started cold emailing people in the Bitcoin space to find work. Not even necessarily high-paying work at first. I just wanted like an in. I was offering to work for people for free, and I only bring that up because I think at times like this, betting on yourself is crucial because you can't leave any trust to this system. You can't rely on your job at Walmart to carry you and your family through this life. It's not going to work out for you. You have no savings. You need a way to save, and you need a way to accumulate, and you have to trade real value in real time, for this Bitcoin. And it might be worth, I think at all points in life, people, this is outside of Bitcoin, should just, think, do I need to kind of rethink, get creative a little bit here about my life situation? I mean, I know you've gone through huge changes in the last 2 years in your life, Mark. So I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I just hit my 3.5 years no drinking, and that's very much so tied up with with my Bitcoin story. When this is now my 5th year in Bitcoin, and obviously, there were some stumbles a bit there at the beginning, but I really found purpose and hope with Bitcoin, to stop spending all my money on stupid stuff and things that are bad for me. I had an outlet, and I mean, betting on yourself is huge. And I think one of the best ways to do it is saving. and Bitcoin is the best savings technology possible. And it actually gives you hope of appreciation, something you can actually hold. All of these things we love Bitcoin about, but it's a means to an end, and it's about you, the person. And I did years and years, well, not years and years, but at least like 3 years of, I was bartending and working super late nights and picking up mats and at 4 a.m. and getting people throwing glassware at me and, all this crazy stuff and these super late nights to just get cash, get money. And then I'd run to the ATM in the morning and deposit it and buy Bitcoin. And I had on my well right next to me, I had my phone with the chart on for like 3 years watching it, it just broke through 6K. Like, oh no. I worked really hard. I hustled a lot. And I did a lot of stuff that, was really difficult and yeah, that's working, and I was lucky enough to be in a position where I could take a bet on myself. And the bets paid off, a little bit. And you got to put yourself in that position to stack and stay humble. And yeah, you're going to have days like today and yesterday, and you're going to see these like, ugh, but the longer you're in it, you almost look forward to those days. You miss those days where you can buy meaningful amounts of Bitcoin, and it's always meaningful, of course, but your unit of account changes. It's crazy. I mean, I put in a couple $100 here or there, and I'm like, damn, like I remember when a couple $100 used to get you like a lot of Bitcoin, and a couple $100
Do you do the
a Bitcoin, it's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't regret like my early learning experience in Bitcoin, but I wish I had more of that buy and hold strategy in the outset. That's why I preach this so often. I know that almost no one's going to listen to me, and they're going to go out and try to trade it. They're going to go buy futures, calls, puts, like they're going to do all sorts of crazy shit and get wrecked before they learn. But like, if you have an open mind, consider just buying and holding as much Bitcoin as possible, because I think it'll do you very well in a few years. Do you ever do, Mark, do you ever do the future projection thing where you just think like, how secure or like how much time can I buy myself in the future if Bitcoin, you know what I mean, if we're at this price and it goes up by this, do you ever do these calculations?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I sort of joke that like the first thing a shitcoiner does when they buy a shitcoin is like take out their calculator and like, oh, what's 10,000, times, if it goes to $4, just ridiculous, this ridiculous stuff, not factoring in market cap or utility or anything like that. But I think with Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, I try not to, I try to stay humble and not get like too crazy about it, but,
right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, that's why I'm as heavily invested as in it as I am, and not even just financially invested, like for myself, but it became a big goal of mine to like get my brothers set up, and make sure that they had Bitcoin for the future. And it was like really awesome. One of them got married recently, and I was like, here you go. And that was like it meant a lot to me. They're still figuring it out, but yeah, and that's why I've done a lot of stuff that I've done, and why I love coming on and talking with you guys and writing for the magazine is because like I want people to get sort of the opportunity that I sort of gave myself, and yeah, I mean, I don't know what else is going to happen if Bitcoin doesn't work. I'm really fearful of a situation where Bitcoin loses, and because of that,
as Matt Odell says, Matt Odell would tell us it's our only hope. Without Bitcoin, we're absolutely screwed.
Yeah,
you'll own nothing.
Yeah, you won't be happy. Yeah, I mean, I love Matt. I think he's got some of the best isms in the space, and I think stay humble, stack sats is like the number one. Like that's just the greatest. And I agree. It's like, stay humble, but understand, the total addressable market of Bitcoin is really high. The fact that you can actually own something is really important. And yeah, I mean, getting a small amount of Bitcoin, we're gonna see sat dollar, parity at some point. It might be 20 years, could be 10, could be 15, could be 6. I don't know. I mean, who knows? But the fact that that's even like remotely a chance, it's like, I don't know why anyone in our generation, like, I don't know what else you would, Like I think at some point, we're getting back to the diversification thing. Like at some point, I'm definitely going to buy a place to live. I'm gonna buy a farm that my dog
Buy it outright.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
think
it's
you'll live in the States? In the States?
I hope so.
What if
I
this
would
announcement is? What if this executive order is you have to sell your Bitcoin?
Well, good luck. No, it won't be anything like that. I mean, I shouldn't say it won't because who knows, but the only way they can really, yeah, exactly. What Bitcoin?
What Bitcoin?
The only way that they can really attack Bitcoin, and they can, but it would be with the ins and outs. So it would be exchanges, KYC stuff and tax stuff. And I think that there's too much.
I think we're gonna see reporting regulations.
Oh yeah.
Because we've been getting by pretty nice lately.
It's been okay. And my parents are CPAs and they're just starting to get crypto clients and stuff. And Bitcoin accounting is really interesting. I think that they will attack the ins and outs and taxes. And I think there will be people trying to flee the country and giving up their citizenship and stuff. But I really don't want that. Like I understand why people do that, have done it. And I don't like the way that some of the authoritarianism is taking place but it's not just America, kind of across the world. But I really think it's important that we, I think Bitcoin is really again, maybe this is American exceptionalism here, but I really think that there's a strong American idealism in Bitcoin. And there's so much Bitcoin in America, and for America to alienate Bitcoiners, which I think are going to be like the strongest purchasing class in the next 20 years, to do something that dumb. I don't think it's in the interest of the US. So I don't think that they'll do it. So I think that they'll attack retail by attacking exchanges and the ins and outs, and they'll tax you very, very heavily. But I think if you've done your due diligence, you have cold storage, hopefully you have some non-KYC, I think you'll be okay. I think it would be really hard for them to do a real big sweeping, 6102 style executive order. Because even in that, I mean, they didn't take everybody's gold. Not one person, I'm pretty sure not one person went to jail for not giving in their gold when that happened. That's not to say they didn't take a lot of gold. They didn't do it. Of course, a lot of people gave up willingly because that's people just hear a command and go, here you go. I don't think that would be the case with Bitcoin. I don't think that kind of seizure will happen. Maybe an exchange. I would much more likely see the US taking like a mining company and being like, for nation state security,
this is ours now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I could see that happening. And that would be
if they don't spin up their own. If they don't spin up their own, they're certainly going to acquire some hash power. Yeah. If they're not already behind these things, not to get too conspiracy-y, if Michael Saylor's personal stash isn't actually the CIA's personal stash, they're going to be accumulating in some form somehow.
Hey, we just had our third solo block mined in the past 2 weeks.
Crazy.
And this one, they're saying that it was done with USB ASICs. Listen, I don't know.
I haven't verified that. I read the story, but does that make you want to mine it all? Looks a little fishy to me, but
no. I mean, yes, because mining's cool and I want to do it as like a fun electrical engineering project, but I don't think I would ever do mining being like, I'm going to make a bunch of money. And I don't know.
But I think you have to approach it as a business, even if you just do it for fun. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah, right? Totally. I think there's a lot of interesting things that needs to happen with mining. We need to have truly decentralized mining pools. We need to figure out a way for mining pools to, actually pay out in a decentralized fashion, not just have another layer of, because right now the way it's set up, a mining pool can choose whatever blocks and transactions they want to run. They're in charge of the candidate blocks. So just because you're mining at home, if you're going into a pool, you're not really adding decentralized hash if that mining pool operator doesn't want to run, these transactions. So there's these issues of censorship in not truly decentralized mining pools. So I like the idea that, three jabronis just won a block running USB miners and but just the chances of that are so astronomical. It's ridiculous. As hash rate is like smashing through all-time highs. We had the biggest difficulty adjustment ever like a week ago, up like 10%. And now, we're down, half of that or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not going to do anything about it. I don't know. Very, very possible someone was mining with USBs and somehow won a block. It is possible. But the more you see stuff like that, it makes me think that there's huge arrays that have gone on without, because all a solo miner means is that there wasn't metadata.
You're not connected to a large
Yeah,
pool.
they're like the miners don't know, and that happens all the time. People put on arrays all the time, and then later they find out, oh, that was this new project, that was this, blah blah. But to have three of them in such a short period of time that are claimed as solo mining, well, it just tickles my, it's like, whoa, we're having a price depreciation, so people are losing money mining, but hash rate is exploding up, and we've had 3 solo mine blocks, and it makes me. Did some huge nation state just turn on a giant array? Is some huge company just put on a bunch of hash that doesn't have metadata for it? And I don't know. That's all speculation, of course. But I think the mining world is going to be really interesting. As hash rate goes up, if prices stays down or goes down, it really starts to price out people. And there's been a lot of people.
What do you think
got hurt in this move? A lot of people buying mining equipment that is no longer profitable that are like, ugh. So when you start to see like miners go on sale and people are desperately trying to dump their miners for Satoshis, that's when you'll see max pain.
What do you think of a business proposition like a Compass mining? I have a hard time with all the trust that's involved there, and I'm like you. I would rather enjoy learning how to use and run an ASIC and take care of it. You know what I mean? Myself.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't do it if I wasn't doing it myself. I mean, again, I like threw in, $100 into Marathon today for fun, but that's very, very different. And there's a lot of trust there also as well. So perhaps I'm being hypocritical, but yeah, I mean, if you don't own the hash rate yourself, and again, even if you're, going into a big pool, there are censorship, centralization points and choke points in who gets to pick candidate blocks. If you're presenting hash to a pool, it also brings up a lot of issues of, UTXOs of dividing up. If you have like millions of people mining in a pool, like how do you split up the token rewards, the token issuance in a way that doesn't just like completely swamp the network? There's a lot of things to be figured out with decentralized mining. There's a really good Shinobi article that came out for Bitcoin Magazine, I think maybe a month and a half ago, that sort of talks about mining as if it's like a totem pole, and it's like the 3 layers of centralization. Super interesting. I highly recommend people check it out. There's a lot to be said there. I don't know the Compass people. I know a handful of people that just got their miners turned on, that, they got a couple, there was a bit of a delay, but they got some free hosting for a year, and they got some other perks and stuff. But yeah, it's interesting because I think in a lot of ways, getting Bitcoin in a sort of DCA-esque style, like a consistent stream of Satoshis is, I mean, what could be better? Excuse me, what could be better than that? But yeah, how you do it is really important. So I don't know. I'm really interested to see how Compass plays out and how that kind of style plays out. I'm also really interested to see how, like a Marathon that, took out a huge amount of debt, and bought like, $750 million worth of mining off of, selling convertible debt. In between that, they got hit with a subpoena. So who knows? Interested to see how that all plays out. But yeah, it does seem kind of weird to be like, I'm securing the network, but my miner is in another state and it's held by another company and the keys are held by another person. And I have to hope that I get paid out. I can see the conflict of potential interest there.
It bears a lot of resemblance to holding your own private keys for me, in the sense that, yes, there's endless arguments against buying Bitcoin on somewhere like a Robinhood, for example. I often encourage people not to use Robinhood at all.
Yeah.
However, if for some reason that's your only option and it comes down to, do you get price exposure on Robinhood or do you get no price exposure? Absolutely, use Robinhood. That's your best bet. It's a continuum, and there are better and worse security practices. There are better and worse ways to contribute to the Bitcoin ecosystem. There are better and worse privacy practices when running your own node or dipping your big toe into mining. And I think it's just a nuanced conversation, and one that you have to be prepared to have kind of again and again as you address your potential security risks, and also as you kind of ask yourself, what do I want to do in the Bitcoin community? Like, why am I here? What am I contributing to?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with sort of the paper Bitcoin stuff, I have a little bit more of a hesitation, but I agree. I mean, if your money's locked up in some way and you can only have paper exposure, I suppose it's better. But I definitely, like, I've advised some friends that were, I slowly got them to, take their Tesla profits and stuff and actually buy Bitcoin. And a lot of them are using Robinhood, and, and then, I was horribly, shocked to hear that they still had it on Robinhood. And I was like, here's a hardware wallet. What are you doing? Like, and it's like, oh my God, you can't even take it out. Like, what are you doing? Well, then sell it or get it on this exchange and do that. So there's a lot of tax stuff, and it is really annoying. But I think not feeding the hypothecation potential is definitely important. Like, where you put your money is important. But yeah, of course, certainly with KYC, I say, if there's no other way for you to get it, it's much better to have exposure. Yeah, it's a great idea to get your money off paper exchanges. Yeah, like dollar cost average out of Robinhood.
Well, for Robinhood now, I would say hold on. They've just released beta wallet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You might be able to export your Bitcoin out of there and not have to take a tax hit at all. Although, previously I wouldn't recommend it because they announced that wallet like 50 times before they made any moves to implement it. But it seems they're making a couple steps now, so it might be worthwhile just hanging on if you are stuck in Robinhood.
That's when the bottom's in. Because these guys, again, I don't know anything. This is an entertainment show, not financial advice. But when you see those guys and the Citadel people being like, now you can take your Bitcoin, that means they actually own that Bitcoin now, at least a strong portion of it. So we might see one more liquidation event down, and then they scoop up a bunch of Bitcoin at 28K or something. And then all of a sudden, magically, you'll get that email and you'll be able to exchange PayPal and Robinhood and all this stuff. And it will be all hunky dory, and they'll pretend like they didn't run a paper exchange for the past however many years. That's when the bottom's in, when a Robinhood is letting you take your Bitcoin out. I'll say that right now.
That's a good tweet, man. Send it. That's awesome. Yeah.
And again, I don't have any idea, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah. What else are you thinking in the Bitcoin world right now? What's going on with you, and how's your strategy changed? Do you sell tops? Are you hurting at all in this dip?
I mean, I'm still well up on my cost average multiple times, which is great. But I haven't always been that way. And it took me a lot of, again, I'm this is a claim to fame. I think I was literally the top for Coinbase in 2017. I have a buy at like 19,750, which I think was literally the top. I might have literally been the top. And obviously that took me a while for that buy to be in the green. But not really. I was super bullish going into 2021. I was like, here we go. I think my prediction No, I know my prediction. It was 144K by the end of the year. And obviously, you know, we got halfway ish there. But I took out enough. Basically, when we went back down a bunch, I went in with a bunch of money that I probably shouldn't have gone in with. More personal money and like my rent and, you know, some, you know, living expenses, because I had taken that out to kind of, because I wasn't working and I was like, okay, I want to, you know, wiggle my way into the Bitcoin space, and, you know, I want to buy this time to do it. So I had taken out some money at an obvious point, what I thought was an obvious point. And then I reinvested basically all of it. And then again, to get more Bitcoin. And then I took a little bit out again, not too long ago, thankfully. But again, this is all like sub, like a %. But I just took some out to, you know, pay my rent for a little bit, pay for my living expenses. And then again, I've been spending it a little bit and buying Bitcoin here or there. But yeah,
man,
I mean,
all in is tough.
Yeah.
All in is really tough if you don't have a big cash flow, because it's expensive to live in the United States.
Yeah, in the Bay Area especially.
Yeah.
But I got myself in a good place where my overhead is pretty low, all things considered. And I'm a pretty humble liver. Like I don't do a ton. I just kind of read and, you know, cook rice and stuff like that. So I have a pretty low overhead, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, I sold, you know, I wrote an article for Bitcoin Magazine called Bitcoin is the Means to an End, and encouraged people to sell their Bitcoin to pay their rent. And, you know, I definitely foresaw us having some negative price action with this macro looking so bad, and, you know, advised a couple people to do the same, but also, you know, I don't trade. I'm not trying to make my money as a trader. It's more just kind of like very obvious lifestyle stuff. And if I see Bitcoin on a fire sale, like I will go in a bit more aggressively than I think a lot of people would, because I do have that conviction, which I did when we, you know, crashed, you know, last time into the 20s. But
This
like I'm trying to just like I have my cold storage that I haven't touched for years and I won't touch. And then I have like a savings account of sorts that's also a cold storage, but a little more accessible. And I haven't touched that at all. And then I have like a checking sort of situation that I keep a little bit on an exchange that has a card that I can use. And I've gone in and out of that. I've basically only stuck with my play money. And it's so far so good. I've managed to live off of it. So
I was trying to enjoy the benefits of not reporting that I had Bitcoin to the IRS through not selling any. So my strategy for the last few years has been just buy it.
Yeah.
I was trading equities, but I was pretty good about like just buying Bitcoin. To the point where, you know, I completely adjusted my lifestyle so that I was never really a huge spender, but I could really, you know, like, let's eat a little bit less sugar. I'm like you. I haven't drank in 3.5 years, coming on 4 years, I think, in April. And it's just like, you kind of look at the average American and how much money that saves. I mean, I do spend money on other vices. I have a sugar tooth. I love ice cream, stuff like that. But I try to cut it back for Bitcoin, you know, and I think it's a cycle that's healthy, and it really helps you think and plan short and long term, because, you know, when your ability to account for the future increases, your ability to plan for it does as well. And the reverse is also true. When you're living in a fiat standard, your ability to account for the future is diminished, and your ability to plan for it is completely compromised. Now that you have Bitcoin, everyone that's listening knows about Bitcoin. You have an option to actually take time now and set it away for time later with no impairment in between, which, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's a life-changing thing. I think I have done enough of the sacrificing to get pure Bitcoin where I'm like, I might change it up a little bit this year. I'm not going to sell any, but I think I'm going to keep a little cash on the side for downward action like this, a little more than I usually do.
Mm-hmm.
See how that goes. Just so, my fiance doesn't kill me, take her on some like
Right.
dates and stuff like that. But
yeah, the Get on Zero crowd is awfully quiet today. But I also kind of live like that. Like I am often on zero, I just have I'm like willing to eat a short-term moment to eat, if I screw something up. But it's anything that I'm playing with is just because whenever I do put myself in a cash position, I can't I can't even go like a week without putting it into Bitcoin. So I've just like kind of learned that, like, that's how I'm like, I just see a juicy dip and I'm like, okay, if basically for the last 2 years, any day that it's gone down more than into double digits, more than 10, I've bought, with basically everything that I had in my checkings account. And then it will go up a bunch and, my dad will be like, you should sell a Bitcoin. And I'm like, no. And I'll sell like a couple $100 or whatever. And then like, it will drop down and then I'm like, ugh, and then I buy. So, yeah, I don't think it's worth it to try to buy and sell tops if you're accumulating, but if you're in like a living off of Bitcoin scenario, yeah, I'm looking forward to changing my lifestyle up a little bit. And get some more cash flow and hopefully like set aside a specific amount of money every month. Like, this is Bitcoin, don't even touch it. And then have like my expenses. That's sort of where I'm hoping to get to. But Brian Harrington is a really awesome Bitcoin educator. I highly recommend checking him out on Twitter. And he has some really interesting talks and strategies about, just like all of the technology we need now to live basically 100% exposed to Bitcoin is there. It's just how you utilize it, whether it's with Cash App with a card or, and then obviously like, self-sovereign cold storage for your actual savings. It's never been easier to live on a Bitcoin standard. And so I would say I pretty much live on a Bitcoin standard, except for the very obvious moments where it's like, okay, I'm going to take out a little bit to, eat today, or if I'm going on a trip or doing something, I still want to live a big, happy life. And that's the whole point of why I wrote that article, Bitcoin is a means to an end, why I'm in Bitcoin to begin with. I don't want to just become a money obsessed person, because I'm not. I like Bitcoin because it's like hope that I can do all this other stuff and bring in all these people that I love to do other stuff with me. So if you're not enjoying life, what's the point? But at the same time, am I just going out and buying, 18 shots of tequila at a club and spending, $400 on consumables? Like, no, may I buy a rare microphone every 6 months or something because it's on sale and it's really cheap and I found it on Craigslist? Yeah. But like, I'm such a frugal, like all my entire studio, like everything I bought was like 50% off on some like Craigslist steal or deal. It's just, it's all about time preference,
The music thing's hilarious to me because when I think I've played guitar for 16, 17 years now. And I used to perform, do the whole, singing, playing routine, bands, all that stuff. It's a very expensive lifestyle, very expensive hobby. And you're not rewarded for it. You don't get paid anything for doing it, really. So even if you're quite good at it. But one of the decisions I made, and I'm so glad I did way back, was to just go all acoustic. I was like, you know what? Fuck this equipment. I can't stay on top of it. Can't afford it. What I enjoy most is just like the purity of this instrument and learning and just the fretboard and the sound and what can you play anywhere an acoustic guitar. So it's just like, we're just gonna get rid of all the electric guitars I had, like 9 guitars. I sold them all. I bought Bitcoin with all of them. It was fantastic. But that's just me. I understand you too, because I'm getting back into it a little. Like, I mean, I got a pretty nice microphone myself, and I hear you. Sometimes you can't pass up on nice tech.
Yeah, Alex, I did basically the total opposite, where I went to school for jazz drums, and then I'm the target audience. No one wants to go see a solo drum show. So I got really into production and composition, and I got like obsessed with learning production. And so I started buying tons of guitar pedals and gear. And, if I didn't want to completely dox myself, turning my camera around, I mean, I'm in a room now that's just like filled with like, I got a Rhodes and like a Farfisa and a super old amp and just like literally like hundreds of pedals. But that was like my, that's what I got into. I was into, I went back to school for electrical engineering and got really into Bitcoin because I wanted to learn how to make fuzz pedals and fix like my tape echo and rebias my amp. And now I've kind of come full circle where I've like made some records for other people. I'm like pretty good at production now. And now I'm like, I just play guitar now, like acoustic guitar, and learn songs and learn chords. And I've come like the total opposite way. And I haven't bought a guitar pedal or a microphone in like a year, and I've just been learning guitar and learning chords and singing. But yeah, no,
dude, that's awesome. I love seeing I always listen to your songs. You play like a song a day on Twitter, it seems like. Do you have like a routine with that, or
no?
It seems like you have one a day.
More or less. Yeah, no, it's just fun for me. I like to learn in the open. I think that's just like a really good, like, just like this, talking about Bitcoin, writing about Bitcoin. It's just fun for me. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm really not a singer or a guitar player or a writer. It's something that, or a songwriter, I should say. But it's just something that I've just enjoyed doing. So yeah, it's not a plan thing. I'm not like, oh, got to do my song for the day. It's just sort of like I end up learning about a song a day because I'll hear something when I'm on my walk with my dog and be like, oh, I got to learn this song. Like, oh, what's that chord or what's this? And I've just been really into singer songwriters and just if I'm always someone where if something is gripping me, I have to go do it. And I know enough now that to like follow my nose. It's the only way I'll do anything is if I'm like want to do it and passionate about it. So
that's key. I think this has parallels like from music. That is key to Bitcoin. I think without that open-mindedness, it's very hard for people to grok Bitcoin. Your circumstances would have to be just right. I think you either have to have a need there. I think, you and I have both explained ad nauseum, like kind of the needs and what, I don't know if you want to call it a void or what problems Bitcoin was solving for us in our lives when we found it. I think that's true of most people who find it. You'll see Michael Saylor, stuck with all this like sovereign debt and just this melting ice cube. Everyone's got some sort of problem that it solves or that they were looking to solve before they find it. And maybe you don't have a problem, but I think open-mindedness goes a long way. You have to be willing to learn and just kind of follow your nose into this completely, I guess you don't have to qualify it, into this unique asset class that is Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I whether or not it's because again, I mean, we're Americans and we have a lot of economic privilege because the US dollar is the reserve currency of the world, but that's just like what we get paid in. And of course, we're going through an interesting moment in the US dollar where everyone kind of needs Bitcoin. But in general, we have the most economic privilege of anyone. So Bitcoin makes a lot of sense for a lot of people across the world for different reasons. You're a Michael Saylor and you're like, okay, I have 500 some odd billion dollars or whatever sitting ice cube melting. What do I do with it? Buy Bitcoin, or million, I should say, buy Bitcoin. Or like I'm a kid who's a bartender who lives in the Bay Area and is never going to be able to do anything at all other than just tread water if I don't speculate in some way. How do I speculate in a way because I have serious trust issues of authority? Well, where do I invest? Here's a savings mechanism that I can actually hold it. And I know it can't be debased. It can lose its price, but it can't ever lose its value relative to the network. Oh, cool. Oh, wow. Its censorship is, oh, wow. It fills this void. But yeah, I mean, if my nose and my interest in my heart isn't into it, I just lose interest and don't care about it. And I've basically been completely obsessed with Bitcoin since I found out, not since I found out about it, but since I looked into it. I found out about it and then didn't do a ton for like 4 years. I just sort of like heard people talking about it. But once I actually was like, oh, let me think about this. I mean, a day has not gone by where I haven't thought about Bitcoin. And to me, I don't think that's pathetic. I'm sure some people would say that's pathetic, but for me, it's like, no, it's that important. It demands that much time from me. It demands that much effort. This is one of the best chances we have of bucking some of these trends that these dystopic, authoritarian, just unfair, I mean, we've just seen so much, horribleness from regimes across the world, and so many people just treated so crappily. And for Bitcoin to actually be like an economic life raft, hopefully, for the working class, it's just like that. To me, it's worth it. And then doubly so if I'm telling my friends and my loved ones, you should look into this, and a lot of them have. It's like, I better damn well know what I'm talking about and better be up to date on it. So, once I really, became sort of a Bitcoin preacher, hopefully a teacher more so, but was really preaching the word of Satoshi in like, the spring of 2020 when everything imploded. I was like, I'm going to dedicate basically 100% of my time to Bitcoin to just make sure I'm not misleading anyone, or I'm not missing something. And it's a rabbit hole that doesn't stop. I just finished mastering Lightning, and there's just so much to learn about everything, and I'm not a coder. So it's been really fun to kind of get uncomfortable learning things that I don't really fully understand. And I recommend everybody to, dive into Bitcoin and know that there are so many levels you can operate on. You don't have to be someone who's going to, write a transaction in their command line and figure out exactly how that all works. There's going to be something in the Bitcoin network, in the ecosystem, that interests you, whether it's freedom money, whether it's the technology, whether it's how cryptography works and math, whether it's the cool stuff that's been written about it, the psychology, the philosophy. I mean, there's so much. So find what it is that interests you and dig in there, and then you'll start to realize that all of them are really connected, and you'll start improving one sense, and then all of your senses, rising tides will rise all boats. And then hopefully you become this super badass, empowered person, like all you guys and all my friends and all these really good Bitcoiners that are like the people that are on the forefront of like the social conversation, and are really doing things and helping people with like, I have a lot of, Bitcoiners are my biggest sense of hope right now, because they've done the work.
Yeah. And there's something great about the whole community is kind of, it's like a shelter for the disaffected, but it doesn't take pity on itself. It owns its weaknesses.
Totally.
It shores up its strengths. I think there's a place in the network for everybody. Everybody can run a node pretty affordably. Everybody, has a chance to really capture a very like new nascent like market that in this field. There's just so many opportunities and ways to make money that giving it your best shot might be well worth your time and energy, whoever you are, because there's so much room in the space on the side of education. I mean, just that on its own, but outside of education, just the technology of it. But I would imagine most people are not, like you said, programmers. But there's so much here. There's so much here to do. And one thing I'd point out as we're wrapping up is like the best opportunity that I can think of. And I got my first jobs in this space around maybe 6 months before conference time, as people were looking toward the conference last year. The best thing you can do is come meet people in Miami. If you're sociable, you're able-bodied, ready to travel, get your tickets today for the Bitcoin 2022 conference. If you're listening on Twitter, hop on over to YouTube. We've got a 21% discount in the description of the YouTube video. It's YTMAG, and that offer is only going to be good for a couple more days. So get your tickets tonight and come hang out with me, Chris, Mark, Greg Foss, Saifedean, Sailor, Nayib Bukele, everybody.
Bunch of dummies.
Yeah.
A bunch of the smartest
dummies,
people
exactly.
that are trying to help the world. So yeah. And I would say, just to kind of wrap up my little thing there, it's like, I know there's a big joke that's like everybody in the world has a podcast or a blog or whatever, but find your voice in some way and do a deep dive in a subject. And you learn so much by trying to write. You learn so much by trying to teach. Even if it's people within your community, your parents, your brother, your sister, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever, like try to teach them about Bitcoin, and you'll learn the things that you don't know. And you'll learn the things that you really do know. It's really fun. Go to your local meetup. If there isn't one, start one. Like, we need everybody on board, not in this like, pyramid scheme way, but in this like revolutionary way. We need strong economic nodes, and try to teach people what it is that you've learned and inspired you about Bitcoin, and be that change you want to see. Go do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd point out that the Bitcoin community extends to everyone on Earth. Anyone can be a willing participant. What I always say is, like, you can choose, the Bitcoin dilemma is you can choose to get in now or wait till a much higher price. There's a chance it'll be lower near term, but I'm speaking long term. I mean, you're not going to be able to live in a world that's void of Bitcoin for much longer. So you might as well begin to educate yourself now. And the great thing is about you joining the network in any capacity, or choosing to, come to Miami, come to the conference, and choosing to actually work in the Bitcoin community and work on Bitcoin in some way or other, is your total addressable market is the whole world. It's everyone. So, you're going to have a huge captive audience. Just look at what happens every time any, celebrity or star announces that they're buying some Bitcoin. Look at the amount of people that rush to support them, whoever they may be.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it's just going to be money, but for now, you can be the legend in your friend group and in your family that orange pilled everybody and gave out hardware wallets and taught them how to do it right, and change lives. Like, it's fun to be that person. Of course, you'll get some texts on some bad days where people are like, what's happening? And, but if you really did it right, you can change your friends' lives, your family's lives, your community's lives. And there's no better feeling than that, honestly.
Awesome. I love it. Listen, Mark, we're going to have you back real soon, I'm sure. Thanks for joining us today. Everybody else, show your appreciation. Go follow Mark on Twitter. Go subscribe, like and subscribe to this channel. We had like probably one of our best days ever in terms of viewership. I'd love it if you all gave us a like and a subscribe on YouTube. We're going to have huge guests in the near future, in the process of booking Michael Saylor, in the process of booking Anthony Scaramucci, in the process of, what do we have? We've got BitBoy and Alex Svetsky on Wednesday, and they are going to fight it out. And this is going to be super exciting. Yeah, this is going to be epic, dude. BitBoy versus Svetsky. Pretty much no rules. I don't even know how to approach moderating this.
Yeah, I was
obviously me and Svetsky are tight as fuck, so I don't really know I don't really know how to unbiasedly like moderate this, but it's gonna be huge.
Yeah, I don't know how you moderate that. You should definitely dress up in your blacks and whites and get a whistle, because it's gonna be a fight, that's for sure. That'll be fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, with that, guys, please like, subscribe, share the stream with your friends. We'll be back tomorrow at about 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, if you haven't heard, the 21% discount on Bitcoin conference tickets is running out. Only a couple days left. So promo code YTMAG at checkout. Go get your tickets tonight, guys. And I want to give away some Bitcoin here before we wrap up. So you'll see a carat QR code on screen, along with a code that you enter into the Carat app. Redeem some Bitcoin for yourself. Those are first come, first serve codes. If we have big streams like this the next few days, we will get into some multi-use codes so we can have multiple winners per code. I think that's a good idea, especially if we have several hundred people watching like we did today. pretty exciting stuff. Anyway, guys, great talking to you today, and we'll catch you tomorrow.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me.